Okay, so meeting started. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Zoning Adjustments Board meeting. I am going to be your chair tonight as Charles is absent. So I will start by reading the public advisory, and then we'll start the real meeting. This meeting will be conducted exclusively through video conference and teleconference pursuant to Government Code Section 54953E and the state declared emergency. This meeting of the Zoning Adjustments Board, ZAB, will be conducted exclusively through teleconference and Zoom video conference. The COVID-19 state of emergency continues to directly impact the ability of the members to meet safely in person and presents imminent risks to the health of the attendees. Therefore, no physical meeting location will be available. To access the meeting remotely, join from a PC, Mac, iPad, iPhone, or Android device. Please use this URL, which I'm not going to read. Presumably you have it. There is a URL that you can find online. If you do not wish for your name to appear on the screen, then use the drop-down menu and click rename to rename yourself to be anonymous. But didn't we figure out that that's wrong? I think you have to change your name before you log in. So anyway, if you don't want your name to be visible, please exit the Zoom software and change your name before logging back in. You do not have to display your name to attend the meeting. To request to speak, use the raise hand icon by rolling over the bottom of the screen. And it's in different places. Hopefully you can figure it out. If you are joining us by phone, dial 1-669-900-6833 and enter meeting ID 835-8631-9905. If you wish to comment during the public comment portion of the agenda, press *9 and wait to be recognized by the chair. So that's like raising your hand if you're joining us by phone. Please be mindful that the teleconference will be recorded, as any ZAB meeting is recorded, and all other rules of procedure and decorum will apply for ZAB meetings conducted by teleconference or video conference. Public testimony guidelines. All persons are welcome to attend the virtual hearing and will be given an opportunity to address the board. Comments may be made verbally at the public hearing and or in writing before the hearing. The board may limit the time granted to each speaker. And by the way, that's chair's discretion. At the start of the meeting, the board may rearrange the agenda or place additional items on the consent calendar. So it is important to be present at the start of the meeting to avoid losing the chance to speak on an item. The board encourages the public to submit comments in writing by email. I'm going to skip that part because it's too late for that. And everything else is not relevant. So did I miss anything, Samantha?
No, I think you got it all.
Great. So let's start. Let's do roll call and ex parte disclosures, please.
Okay, so when I say your name, please let me know if you are present and if you have any ex parte. Board Member Trigu.
He's not here.
Present.
Oh.
My apologies. I made it back from Sacramento, and I am sitting in my car and with you all today. Happy to be with all of you today. I have one ex parte to report. It's on 2213 4th Street /747/787 Bancroft Way. And it was a conversation I had with Erin Dean about process rather than substance. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Duffy?
Present. I have one ex parte communication regarding 2213 4th Street and 747 Bancroft Way. On Tuesday the 14th, I had a meeting with Mark Rhodes from a Zoom meeting for about 20 minutes with Mark Rhodes from Rhodes Planning Group and the applicant for the project to discuss just some of the background of the project and some project process.
Board Member Gaffney,
Present, no ex parte.
Board Member Thompson,
Present, no ex parte.
Board Member Olson,
Present, and I'm thrilled to say I have no ex parte because I would never meet with any applicant. Thank you.
Chair O'Keefe,
Present, no ex parte.
Chairperson Khan. We know he has an excused absence tonight. Commissioner or Board Member Kim
Present, no ex parte.
and Board Member Sanderson.
Present, no ex parte.
Thank you, everyone.
Great, thanks. And while we're introducing ourselves, I'll just acknowledge that Josephine Mitchell and Dorley Dixon are part of our captioning team. So they're doing live captioning for us, in case you're wondering who these other attendees are. I think everyone else is labeled. So welcome, captioners. Thank you so much for your work. Okay, so I think before we are going to have public comment on non-agendized items, which is always the first thing we do, but we're going to do something else first, which is elect a temporary vice chair. I'm expecting to be able to chair the entire meeting. However, if something happens, my internet goes out, or I have to deal with a child crisis, that person will be designated to take over. So, Igor.
I would like to nominate Do-hee Kim, Commissioner Kim, as temporary vice chair.
Great. All right, so we have one nomination, does not require a second. Carrie Olson?
I was going to second, so I don't need to.
Seconding is, can be spiritual as well as necessary. Okay, so we have one nomination. Are there any other nominations? Comments?
Yes.
Okay, seeing none, let's vote on Do-hee Kim as temporary vice chair.
Okay. Chair O'Keefe.
Oh, wait, before I vote yes, which I was planning to, Do-hee, are you okay with that? I mean, you could have said something, but just want to make sure.
No, I appreciate the space to comment, but no, thank you for, I'm happy to do it. I just want to let everyone know that my camera isn't working, but my Wi-Fi is fine, and so I'm present and I can help out and step in when need to.
Great. All right. Hopefully you won't have to, because that means something's gone wrong, but I'm glad you're willing to step in if necessary. Okay, just wanted to make sure before I forced her to do this. So I vote yes on that.
Board Member Kim,
Yes, thanks.
Olson,
Yes.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Trigu,
Yes.
Sanderson,
Yes.
Duffy,
Yes.
and Chairperson Khan is absent. Okay. That passes, and Board Member Kim is vice chair for the evening.
Excellent. Glad to have you on board the leadership team. Chairperson Kim. Councilmember Kim. So let's see. Now we're going to do anyone from the public who wishes to speak on an item not on the agenda. So once again, if the item you're here to speak about is on the agenda, you will have a chance to speak about it later, whether it's on consent or not. But if you're speaking about something that's not at all on the agenda, now is your time. Please raise your hand. And am I a host? I don't think I can recognize people.
I just realized that I didn't do that, so I'm doing it right now.
And I do see two raised hands. We've got a timer there. So you'll have 3 minutes to speak on anything that's not on the agenda. And I will first, hold on, that messed up my screen. I will first recognize Richard Rogers. Richard, you've got 3 minutes.
Oh, yes, I won't need nearly that. I just wanted to clarify the Zoom environment here. It's a little different from what I'm used to. There's no chat service being provided for the meeting. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And okay, and outside participants like myself, you don't have video.
That's correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure that everything was operating as it was supposed to. Thank you.
Great, no problem. Happy to answer your questions. And this is the right time for it. Okay, so thank you, Richard. Next, I'm going to recognize Kelly Hammergan. Kelly?
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, I'm going to sort of ramble because my speech that I was thinking of giving, I was expecting Charles Kahn to be here, and he's not. You know, I've been attending these meetings for a long time and talk about the importance of nature and climate and how that should impact the decisions that you all make about the buildings. And I took a little walk tonight down to one of the projects, and it just, you know, it's a beautiful day, and everything seems, shall we say, so normal. And it's hard to think that we're really in a climate emergency when the sky is blue and there's a gentle breeze and it all feels so nice. But we really are in a crisis. And at a meeting I attended earlier this week, a person spoke up and said, "This is going to be the coolest summer you'll ever have for the rest of your life." And of course, the temperature goes up and down. And then I saw on my phone the next day an article about just how much warming we're having and how it's impacting life around the world. And then, you know, then I think about the little mourning doves that there's a pair that's been nesting on my house, and usually they have a clutch of 2 birds and they both hatch. And this year, only one little fledgling survived, and it left a little early. I don't think that bird's going to survive. And then a second pair moved in, and they lost their nest, so there were no surviving birds. And I didn't think that, you know, seeing nature like that would really make me so sad, but it does, because nature really rejuvenates us, and we don't always appreciate it until it's gone. And so I'm just going to ask that when you look at the projects tonight, that you really kind of think about our future and the environment and the climate, and how we can make the projects make all of that better. So
Great.
thank you.
Thank you very much, Kelly. I appreciate that very much. All right. So is there anyone else from the public who would like to speak right now? We've got Erin Dean. All right, Erin, you've got 3 minutes.
Hi, thank you for taking my comment, and thank you for your service this evening. I guess I'll just piggyback a little bit on what Ms. Hammergren said. This is Pollinator Week, and I attended a conference on Lepidoptera. It was a nationwide conference, and they said that since the 1970s, they're tracking temperature increases, and per decade, the coasts are experiencing a 0.7 degree increase Fahrenheit every 10 years. Since 1970. So the coasts are actually being more impacted than the interior of the country. This, of course, is going to impact our nature, like Ms. Hammergren just said. And on a personal note, you know, thinking about how the birds are in our lives, I have this app called Merlin. I don't know if you guys have it on your phone, where
I have it.
If you hear bird song, you can turn it on and it will do automatic bird song recognition. And about 2 weeks ago, all of a sudden, the Pacific Slope flycatchers showed up. And so I go look them up online, and they come all the way from Southern and Central America. So that, you know, they made their little flight here, thousands of miles. And now they're here flying around Berkeley. And then at some point they head back south again. And it really makes life better. And I do agree that as we make our building decisions, we need to think about how the buildings integrate with nature. And especially in the face of climate change, how they're still going to support nature in our cities, because there's more and more science about the importance of cities for being kind of little habitat patches on these corridors. And the last thing is that I just heard today down at Aquatic Park, some black neck stilts are now nesting, and they have little baby, like teenager baby birds running around. So it's on the north end evidently of Aquatic Park. So if anybody likes those birds, they're down there. But very seriously, that we consider nature and how do we continue to incorporate it and protect it in our city. And you all make very important decisions. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Aaron. That is a wonderful app. It's like Shazam, but for birdsong. Okay, so Deborah, would you like to respond?
No, I just wanted to mention that Deborah Matthews is the substitute for Charles Kahn, and she's trying to log in. So
I didn't know we had a substitute.
So anyway, I hope she can get in. I sent her the corrected agenda. So I think she should show up shortly.
Great, that's great news. I'm glad to have her. Samantha, you've got that?
I don't see her yet, though. Anyway, I guess we should continue and then.
Yeah, I'll look into that.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you so much, Deborah, for alerting us. I didn't know we had a substitute. That's great. Okay, so next on the agenda, assuming no one else from the public has something to speak about that's not on the agenda, seeing no hands, I'm going to move on. So now we're going to talk about what stays on and what does not stay on the consent calendar. So currently, we have on the consent calendar, we have the minutes. We have 2328 Channing, 921 University, and 925 University. So what I'm going to do first is I am going to recognize Igor in just a moment. I'm going to explain our process, and I'll recognize you, Igor. I'm going to ask the public if they would like to comment on any of those items. And specifically what we're looking for is comments that are have taken issue or opposing the project, basically alerting us to some issue that would cause us to take it off of the consent calendar, because all three of those projects are slated for approval. So if we vote yes on the consent calendar, they will all be approved. So if that's okay with you, you don't need to make a comment right now. That's probably what's going to happen. Can't predict the future. But if you would like to raise an issue that we should know about and would likely have us take it off the consent calendar and give it a full hearing, now would be the time to raise your hand and let us know. And I'm going to give the same opportunity to the board members if they would like to raise an issue on any of these projects, and we could discuss taking it off the consent calendar. So that's the process. I'm going to recognize board member Tregub, and then I'm going to look at the attendees to see if any hands are up. Tregub?
Yeah, I don't want to take anything off consent, but I did have some questions, and I don't know if you'd like to first ask members of the public if they want to take anything off. And then
I'll let the public go first, and then we'll go ahead and. Okay, thanks. Okay, so we do have Kelly Hammergren has her hand up. So Kelly, I'm going to recognize you for just 2 minutes, and you know the drill because you've been here before. So let's see. Here we go. Kelly, you're recognized. Wait, sorry. Are you? I thought I pressed the button. Let me try again. I keep pressing allow to talk, and then it cancels.
Okay.
Okay, that worked. I don't know. Hi, Kelly.
Hi. So on this first project on Channing Way, I was concerned about, where it says that the building separation from 20 feet to 0 and reducing the rear minimum yard setback of 10 to 17 feet to 5 feet, that we're making this exception for this building. So those were my concerns. Otherwise, I don't have big objections, but
Well, do you have a question? I'm not sure what is your concern.
So do we really want to reduce the backyard setback? I mean, what is going to be the impact? I did not walk to this site to really take a good look at it, to see the impact on the neighborhood by reducing the setback. I don't think the 8 feet in front, where 10 feet is required was a big deal, but I wondered about the backyard setback and connecting these two buildings. Has that reached all the approvals that it will need to be built? So that's it.
Well, it is recommended for approval, so I assume it is meeting zoning guidelines. Okay, well, if anyone wants to comment on that, we can take that under advisement. Thank you, Kelly. Debbie, would you like to comment on something on the consent calendar?
Yeah, I'm the architect. I just wanted to answer Kelly's question, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. Just 2 minutes. Yeah.
Kelly, so our back neighbor is actually the UC tennis courts. So we felt like that was not an impact on that neighbor. So that's why we felt okay. And we did make the findings required to grant that reduction. So.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's very helpful. I appreciate that. So, okay, I'm going to disable that. Anybody else from the public like to comment on the consent calendar? Remember to press *9 if you'd like to raise your hand if you're joining us by phone. Okay, seeing none. Oh, wait. Gail Alcock has raised their hand. Gail? Am I saying your name right?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, I didn't see the consent calendar. I was just told that you would discuss the glass at some point.
I'm sorry, for what project is this regarding?
This is about a large story building that's going to have 4 glass on 4 sides that's going up.
Samantha, what do you think? That's probably 4th Street, right?
And it's about bird safety.
That's 4th Street.
That sounds like, I don't recall seeing a large glass on Channing, or the other ones are about alcohol sales.
Yeah, it's a proposal.
Mm-hmm.
So is that on the calendar today?
Assuming we think you're talking about 4th Street, which is not on the consent calendar.
Okay, I was told to show up for this meeting to talk about the bird safety. That's not going to be talked about today?
Well, we're going to talk about the project. Let me read the full name of it because it's a lot. It's 2213 4th Street and 747 Bancroft Way. We will be talking about that after we dispense with the consent calendar. Okay. And I'm guessing that's what you're here to talk about, but I'm not sure.
The second building you're talking about, yeah.
Okay, great. So yeah, just hang tight and you'll get a chance to speak about that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All right, and then I thought I saw one more hand up, but maybe it went down. All right, well, it's Deborah Matthews, right? So, Samantha, did you say, are we promoting Deborah?
Samantha, I sent you her email address.
Sure. We actually didn't receive anything from the clerk's office that Charles had an alternate. But I know that Deborah is, I know she's an approved alternate.
She used to be the chair.
Yeah. So I'm not entirely sure, and I've lost, for some reason, my ability to open my participant screen. Oh boy. Because it popped up on my other screen.
Okay.
So I'm not entirely sure. We're just looking through the manual to see. It's probably okay.
I guess the concern would be that if the paperwork didn't go through, that any votes she cast may be invalidated, and that could, if something was close, that could throw some chaos into the situation. That would be my concern.
Yeah, if you could maybe just, yeah, I think we needed confirmation from the clerk. If you could just give me minute or two just to do some digging to find out.
Okay. Deborah, hopefully you're okay. Maybe not joining the consent calendar, and maybe we'll get your valuable input for the action calendar.
I can pass on a message. She and I are texting.
Okay, I mean, she can hear me.
That she said she'll pass for this evening.
Oh, okay.
So.
Okay. Well, sorry, we'll miss you, Deborah. Sorry we didn't get to have you on the board tonight.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming. I'm really sorry. I believe that we need confirmation from the clerk by 5 p.m. Before the meeting starts for an alternate.
Okay, moving on. So Igor, you had a question, I believe.
Yes, I had a few. And to be clear, I don't have intention of pulling anything off consent. These are just questions. On the action minutes for the last meeting, item 11, it has me as moving something and board member Olson seconding. But I think we ended up deciding that no vote was needed, and the vote says NA. So can I ask staff if you would consider just removing the motion and second, or just calling that NA? That's
yes.
the question on.
I thought I had caught that when I was reviewing the draft, but it looks like maybe we forgot to delete it. I have removed that motion and second, and we'll read that into the vote for the consent calendar and action minutes.
Okay, thank you. And then both 921 University and 925 University, which are great and in my neighborhood, and I look forward to frequenting them hopefully after they're approved. But in the spirit of completeness, for 921, I wanted to ask why there was no police report provided for prior violations of the alcohol permit, if any, whether it had to do with the level of permit. And for 925, it does discuss that, but it says a communication from BPG is pending. But so I wanted to just ask staff if you have received that communication.
Yeah. They were provided as the supplemental communications. So they are both available. Neither of these required the public convenience and necessity findings, which is often like where that is discussed in the staff report. And there were some vacations happening, so our letters came a little late after we had published the packet, but they were posted as supplemental communications. I know that the board had asked us to make sure we provide that, even if we're not doing the public necessity findings.
Great, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I apologize, I missed that.
Hey, is that all your questions, Igor?
Yes.
Okay, great. Next up, I'll recognize Carrie Olson.
I'm ready with a motion if you're ready to receive it.
Oh, I muted myself. I'm personally ready to receive it. I would like to hear from Michael, and Igor also has his hand up. So let's hear the motion, Carrie, and then we'll hear from you, Michael.
My motion is simple. It's to approve items 1 through 4 on the consent calendar.
All right. So there's a motion. Michael.
I just wanted to acknowledge the letter that someone from a member of the public sent in. It was a supplemental attachment for 921 University. And there was some concern about more liquor in the neighborhood as opposed to food and possibly, clothing and its proximity to the school. And I mean, since it made it to consent, I would assume that all the requirements are met, but I did want to acknowledge that letter and see if there's, I was hoping that person would speak today and give us more about it. I just wanted to acknowledge that. And if some of the more experienced members on the board could maybe talk to that.
Okay, thank you, Michael. I'm kind of a libertarian when it comes to alcohol, so I don't think I have anything that I would want to hear. But Igor, I recognize you, and you can answer Michael's questions if you like, or whatever else you had to say.
Oh, I was prepared to second Board Member Olson's motion, but with the proviso that the minutes will be amended as was discussed. I hope that was your understanding, Commissioner Olson.
Absolutely.
I wasn't prepared to answer Michael's question, but it's a good question. I do live 4 blocks away, no, six blocks away, but definitely in the neighborhood. And I will say this, that it is an urban area. The San Pablo and University corridors do have some crime, but I have no knowledge of that crime being related to alcohol permits in those particular blocks of University. And there have been other both permits we've granted to businesses in that vicinity in the past, as well as existing permits that have actually kind of helped revitalize those blocks of West University Avenue. So as long as BPG doesn't have any concerns, I don't have any concerns either.
Yeah, thank you. And actually, it's good to note that I don't believe this business will be selling more than just alcohol. And I think it's a common practice that for a business to be economically successful, being able to sell alcohol is very helpful. And so, we certainly want our small businesses to succeed and serve the community. And so if this helps them, that's a good reason to approve it. So we have a motion and a second. Carrie?
I just want to add, because I don't know where else to say it, but since Michael brought it up, I find the new website to be absolutely lacking in reaching supplemental communications. So could I just pass the message on? Maybe others will agree with me. Finding them is not as easy as it should be, and it should be easy for us and easy for public. Thank you.
Thanks, Carrie. That feedback is helpful, I'm sure. Okay, Igor.
Apologies, I didn't mean to take up that much space, but I wanted to wholeheartedly agree with Board Member Olson, and I'm sorry to say this because I know how much effort it was to migrate to the new website, and I know that there are other bugs that are being resolved, but I also got the ping yesterday that communication supplementals have been received. And I tried to do it on my phone. I tried to look for them. And I tried several times and I was not able to access it. So unfortunately, I will have to agree with Board Member Olson's comments and was actually wondering, I know staff is doing a lot and it's short-staffed, so I want to be sympathetic. But if there was a way to revert back to the practice of sending us individual links of those staff communications on a per project basis, that would be easier, at least for me to access. And it sounds like I'm not the only one.
Yeah, thank you. Deborah Sanderson?
Oh, I just wanted to mention, I think that the directions in the body of that memo was what was confusing, because after I kind of figured out what I was looking at, I could open them easily. But the directions on how to open them, I think, was where the problem is. So if that helps.
Great, thanks. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Samantha, do you want to add anything?
I was just going to offer just to do a very quick screen share just to show where they are, because it is unfortunately not very intuitive if you don't know where to look. And I like to use every opportunity to, provide people with the way to find things. Could I do that, Chair?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great idea. There's a need for it.
Okay.
and then we'll vote.
Great. Okay, so on the zoning adjustments board page, when you go to the meeting agenda, so you click, that gives you to the agenda. If you click on this caret, it will drop down any supplemental communications, and this is also where the ZAB videos will be posted. So we try to get the videos for each one posted within a few weeks. We're still trying to get those uploaded onto the new website. But so this is where you find the supplemental communications. And I know that's not entirely intuitive, but maybe we can look at adding some information bubbles or directions too on the website.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you for allowing that.
Yeah, definitely, appreciate it. Okay, so the motion, which has been seconded, is to approve the consent calendar as is with the slight edit to the minutes. So unless someone raises their hand in the next 10 seconds, let's do a roll call vote on that.
Okay, great. So this is to approve the consent calendar and to amend the action minutes to remove the motion and second on the withdrawn item for 2600 10th Street. Chair O'Keefe?
Got me going first today. Yes.
Board Member Kim?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Gaffney?
Yes, I'm going to abstain from the minutes since I wasn't here.
Thompson?
Yes.
Trigu?
Yes.
Sanderson?
Yes. Yes.
Duffy?
Yes.
And Khan is absent.
Okay, I was going to say my little thing, but Dohi?
Oh, my apologies. I just wanted to say I would like to abstain from the minutes because I missed last meeting as well.
Okay. We still have enough votes for the minutes, right? Yeah, just we're only down 3, so should be good. Okay, great, thanks, Commissioner Kim. So the consent calendar passes by my math. And so the minutes are approved. 2328 Channing, 921 University, and 925 University. You have your use permits. They are appealable to the City Council, so don't get too excited. Moving on, we will take on our action calendar, which just has one item, which has been combined, or it's actually 2 items that have been combined. Actually, Samantha, if you, well, I guess I'll explain it. Are they 2 separate projects, or how should we refer to them? They're one item on the agenda.
Yes, I think Sharon will probably do the best job explaining it, but they are related projects on 2 different parcels.
Okay, great. So speaking of which, let's begin with the staff report. Sharon, where are you? Oh, she probably needs to be, oh, I have to allow her to talk. Okay, sure. Hi, Sharon. Could we actually,
good evening.
Hi, Sharon. Could we make her, oh, there she is. Good.
I am here. Yeah, great. Thank you. So I'm going to share my screen because I have a little slideshow that might help visualize the project. So let's see what I can do here. Share screen. Okay. All right, there we go. So, good evening, board members. We are here to discuss the projects at 2213 4th Street and 747 Bancroft Way. These are 2 separate use permit applications and are separate projects in that sense on their own, but we're presenting them together tonight because they have overlapping scope. And they're also related to a larger four-phase project that is at this site. So we're going to present them together, and but they do have their own set of each have their set of findings and conditions documents. So the use permit at 2213 4th Street, ZP 2021-0043, is to demolish 3 existing non-residential buildings and 1 existing duplex and construct a 128,143 square foot, 4.5 level parking garage containing 412 off-street car parking spaces and 1 loading space to serve the uses in the vicinity of the project site. And ZP 2021-0096 at 747 Bancroft Way is to demolish 6 existing buildings and construct a 159,143 square foot, 3-story building containing 124,539 square feet of research and development space and 34,604 square feet of light manufacturing space, and a surface parking lot containing 76 off-street parking spaces and 5 loading spaces. So the project site is located in West Berkeley, directly east of the aquatic park. It is bisected by 4th Street and generally bordered by Alston Way to the north, 5th Street to the east, Bancroft Way to the south, and the Union Pacific Railroad corridor to the west. The site's located in the mixed-use residential MUR and mixed-use light industrial MULI districts and is south of the 4th Street commercial area. The site is also adjacent to 600 Addison, which is the Berkeley Commons development, a research and development campus containing 2 buildings and 470,000 square feet of floor area and 2 parking structures with 943 parking spaces. And that was approved by ZAB in May of 2021 and is currently under construction. So the projects we're looking at tonight are the 2nd and 3rd phases of an overall 4-phase redevelopment plan for the site. Phase 1 consisted of tenant improvements within 3 vacant light manufacturing buildings south of the Phase 2 area, totaling about 78,000 square feet, and it is currently under construction. Phase 4 consists of tenant improvements within a vacant 25,000 square foot industrial building north of the Phase 2 area. Did I get that right? Oh, north of the Phase 3 area, and construction of a 4,800 square foot addition on the 2nd story for light manufacturing, accessory research and development, and office use. And that phase is also currently under construction. So Phase 2 and 3 require use permits, and we're reviewing that tonight. While Phase 2 and 3 are, as I explained before, Phase 2 and 3 are distinct separate projects requiring their own set of use permits and conditions of approval, and are presented together tonight because of the overlap in scope, and they're related to the larger 4-phase project. In Phase 2 on 4th Street, which is also known as the East Block of the project, there's a demolition of 4 existing buildings, 3 non-residential and 1 duplex, merger of 3 parcels into 1, and construction of the 128,000 square foot, 4.5 level parking garage with 412 car spaces. It has rooftop photovoltaic solar array, and about 3,500 square feet of landscaped parklet on the north portion of the site, and entry driveways on 4th and 5th Streets. Phase 3, which is 747 Bancroft, or the West Block of the project, has a demolition of 6 existing non-residential buildings, a merger of 4 parcels into 2, reconfigured, and construction of the 159,000 square foot 3-story building with 124,000 square feet of research and development and 34,000 of light manufacturing, has 6,000 square foot of outdoor plaza and 4 terraces totaling approximately 2,500 square feet on the second and third floors. A parking lot on the adjacent parcel, one of the two that are reconfiguring to, for 76 parking spaces and 5 loading spaces, and has 2 driveways along Bancroft Way. Also has 80 bike parking spaces and includes transportation demand management program that's captured in a condition of approval in detail. The photovoltaic solar equipment for the new phase 3 building that you're looking at here will be provided with a solar array on the roof of the phase 2 garage building on 4th Street. So there's some of that interrelationship there. And a portion of the parking requirement for the new phase 3 building at Bancroft will be accommodated in the parking lot on site in the on site adjacent to the building, and the remainder of the parking for this new building will be incorporated into the garage at 4th Street. So CEQA-wise, the phase 2 and phase 3 projects were both subject to CEQA review and a draft initial study and mitigated negative declaration, or ISMND, was prepared by the city, identifying several project-specific conditions of approval and mitigations that are incorporated into the project conditions and into the mitigation monitoring and reporting program for the project. The ISMND was published in March of this year, and 6 public comment letters were received during the comment period. The city prepared responses to the comments and incorporated both the letters and responses into the final initial study document, and that's attached to the staff report and the whole packet. So phases 2 and 3 of the overall development project involves the demolition and replacement of existing protected uses in the Muley zoning district, where the majority of the project lies. The Muley district has special provisions for the change of use or removal of floor area that is established with a material recovery enterprise, manufacturing, wholesale trade, or warehouse use. The phases 2 and 3 on the 4th Street and Bancroft sites propose to demolish protected use area that would be replaced at the required ratios, partially in the phase 1 part of the overall project, and partially in the new building in phase 3. With the approval of all the requested permits, including the variance to allow a delay of 2 years in the replacement of a portion of the demolished protected area, the full construction of phase 1, 2, and 3 of the overall project at the site would fulfill the replacement requirement for the amount of protected use proposed to be eliminated in the phases 2 and 3. At this point, I'm going to cover a couple of revisions to the conditions that have been brought up. So after the release of the staff report, staff was made aware of a couple of revisions to the conditions of approval. And I'll show on the slides the full text of the recommended conditions, and then I'll just summarize them verbally. In condition 28 for 747 Bancroft permit and condition 24 of the 4th Street permit, those conditions will specify that the solar voltaic system required by code for the building at 747 Bancroft will be provided on the roof of the parking structure at 2213 4th. Condition, oh, that's interesting. I thought that might be a typo there. Condition number 59 of 747, hold on. Oh, here we go. Conditions 59 of 747 Bancroft will have language added to clarify that a deed restriction shall be recorded on parcel 2 of the site, specifying that a portion of the parking for the new building on parcel 1 will be provided in the parking lot on parcel 2. And conditions 58 and 63 of 747 Bancroft will be revised to reflect a corrected amount of 34,604 square feet of protected use floor area to be provided and maintained in the new building. I think that's it. Yeah, 28, right, 28 and 24 are covered. And okay, so those are the revisions to the conditions that we're going to be incorporating into the conditions document. So with these revisions, staff is recommending approval of the permits. And at this point, staff can take any questions that the ZAB may have. I'll just say I'll do my best to answer the questions on this project, but I'm kind of I think I'm the second or third planner on this project, and I just picked this up in the last 2 months to finish out. And so I have Steve Buckley to help answer any questions, to provide a history in the project. And I also have CEQA consultant, LSA, people from that office available to answer questions for CEQA. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Sharon. That was great. I had no idea you picked it up recently. And yeah, I saw Steve's in the audience, so glad to have you, Steve. So at this point, yeah, we'll take questions for staff. We will hear from the applicant momentarily, but first, clarifying questions for staff or for the CEQA consultant. Igor.
Thank you so much. First, I wanted to ask if you have received any comments on the project that came in after the supplemental cutoff, and if so, if it might be possible to share any common themes in those communications, since they, because they were submitted after the deadline, they didn't go to us. Not that there's an obligation of staff to do that after the deadline, but just curious. And then my second question, it seems like we have been getting some communications around bird-safe glass, and was just wondering whether you or Steve could give us just some foundational information about what, if anything, is required currently in the ordinance and where that mitigation landed. Does it actually say, as proposed right now, that it will be 90% of the west-facing window that would be deemed bird safe, but nothing more?
I can speak to the correspondence that came in after the supplemental letters were published. Yeah, there were a number of emails that came in after the supplementals were published, and they seem to kind of coalesce around bird safety, bird safe glass issues, primarily, from what I could see. As far as the bird safe requirements, I'm wondering if Steve can step in and give us a little bit of background there.
Hi, good evening. Yeah, so the bird safe referral is still under consideration. So in terms of researching best practices, we actually have somebody working on that right now. There were conditions of approval on the Bayer project and on 600 Addison. And I think we're taking those as, first steps on an ad hoc basis, and we'll see how that goes, and then take it from there with a new ordinance and design guidelines.
Thank you. But just to be clear, then, does the is it the neg deck or the MMD, whichever one it is? What is the current condition? Does it limit it to 90% of west-facing windows only?
That I'm not sure of. I'd have to refer back to it.
Okay, thank you. I will ask that again. So if there, so be ready.
Sure.
I think this hearing is going to take a while, so if at any time you have an answer to that, just you can just pop in and we'd love to hear it, the answer. Okay, Igor, is that it?
It is.
Okay, great. Deborah Sanders.
Okay, I have a question. I think it may clarify Igor's question. The mitigation monitoring, in the staff report, it says, page 17, that the mitigation monitoring plan focuses on the implementation of mitigation measures is included, but that the mitigation monitoring plan is adopted with these two projects. So that means whatever is in the mitigation monitoring plan is included as required in these two projects. I have that right? Because impact 3.4 bio 1, I'm not sure which numbers you're using these days. It implies that what's in the mitigation monitoring plan is considered adopted with this project. So if that's true, then bio 1 is all about bird-side glass, and it would then be required of the project. So I just need clarification on, typically the mitigation monitoring plan is approved and adopted as part of the project.
That's correct.
So in that case, the mitigation measure bio 1 talks about the bird-side glass and 90% of the windows on the west-facing wall. It references U.S. Fish and Wildlife's best practices for reducing bird strikes with buildings. Bird strikes with buildings. So it appears to me that that mitigation measure is required of this project, as would be the others in the mitigation monitoring plan.
That's right.
Okay, thank you. So it's in there. Yay.
Great. Thanks for clarifying that, Deborah. You're an expert at reading reading all the stuff. So that's great to know. Yes, did you have your hand up? And see you put it down.
Oh, no.
Oh, sorry, Deborah, were you done?
Yeah, I was done.
Great.
I was just on that same page of bio 1. I'd be happy to share it with anyone as well. But thank you, Deborah.
Great. Okay. Thank you for that. Any further questions for staff, for Sharon or Stephen, or our CEQA consultant, whose name I'm forgetting? I apologize. Yes, do you have a question? Or is your hand still up? No. Okay, so seeing none, let's hear from the applicant. And of course, if any questions for staff come up later, they're still here, so you can ask them anytime. I'm just going to explain before we start, because this is actually, kind of two projects that we've combined into one, the applicant has requested to have 10 minutes for their presentation. Normally we give 5. And so I'm going to grant that. The applicant has 10 minutes, and I'm also going to give the members of the public a little extra time as well. So it should all work out in the end, but I'm going to give them a little more time than usual, and that's why I wanted to explain my reasoning. So applicant team, are you here?
Yes, Steve Dunn. Welcome board. I'm the partner running our Northern California operation for SteelWave. Been with the company 28 years. I'm a local East Bay resident and deep heritage in Berkeley. 4th generation Cal grad. My grandfather was the high school principal during 60 to 69, trying times.
At Berkeley High?
Yeah, Berkeley High.
That's where I teach.
My mom grew up in Berkeley, and just very excited to be here tonight to present to ZAB. We've been working on this project for almost 3 years.
I'm sorry, Mr. Dunn, just one moment. Can we get the timer? Perfect, thank you. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Dunn.
It's really exciting because we've actually got something in place where we're completing. We actually are doing our punch list walk next week on our phase 1. So we're really excited about that renovation and reuse. And we've had really good comments from the community as well as staff. So we're very excited about that. I also want to note that wasn't in the notes. We did, after the first DRC meeting, we held a neighborhood meeting because of the interest, and we walked the project, listened to their ideas, and responded to those, and along with the DRC comments, and we submitted it back to all the participants. And then we finalized our DRC design with those comments in mind. So I think that was very successful, and we really embraced their ideas, and I think they were very helpful. So I want to thank them for that. And with that, I would like to introduce Raju or Phil at IPD to talk first about 2213, which is the garage, and then we'll get into the building to finish. So hopefully they were admitted. I don't know if I saw them.
I am here, Steve.
Okay.
Thanks. This is Raju Nandwana with International Parking Design. Unfortunately, it's not allowing me to share the screen while another participant is sharing. Maybe someone can release the screen.
Just you guys, that's fine, but be aware that timer's still going, and we'll cut you off after 8.5, whatever's left. So if you can manage it yourselves, that'd be great.
I will go very quickly. Can you see my screen here?
Yeah,
we can.
Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of good things were covered by both Stephen and Sharon on the project, and I'd just like to focus on a couple of items that maybe weren't covered. Again, my name is Raju Nandwana. I'm president of International Parking Design, and I run the Oakland office here, and happy to be an East Bay resident as well. This is a look at our parking structure project. One of the things that was not mentioned was we are providing 50% of the vehicles capable of being EV charging stations within the garage. We are looking at mitigating the massing of the building extensively beyond what the zoning requirements would require, based on some of that feedback that we had received through the community engagement and meetings that we held with the DRC. We are looking at a garage that basically has entries and exits off of the 5th and 4th Street sides. 4th Street elevation is very much complementary with the kind of light industrial manufacturing R&D kind of nature and character of that corridor, where the 5th Street side really is trying to step down and be more complementary to the residential scale and neighborhood surrounding. So this image here is actually a image of where we started with the DRC process. This was within the zoning height limitations and guidelines, and through the correspondence with the neighborhood groups as well as the DRC, we took pretty extreme measures to step back the massing of the structure, reduce the PV canopy presence on the street frontage, and added additional greenscape at the ground plane pedestrian level, as well as introduced a pocket park along the northeast corner for community benefit. So there's a lot of advantages that I think having those conversations with the city and the community made towards bettering the project. And I think what we've had thus far is really positive feedback from all those considered. On the 4th Street frontage, we are bringing landscape up onto the building in the form of planters. We have kind of a diamond pattern perforated metal, which is complementary to the on-point glass block of the adjacent existing industrial buildings. So we feel that it's a very complementary design and well compliant within the zoning guidelines for the area. The one thing that was also not mentioned was the percentage of photovoltaic coverage on the roof. The requirement is 15% of the roof area of the 747 building, which would equate to about 9,000 square feet of PV. We're actually providing close to 25,000 square feet, so an additional 27% for a total of 42% of the roof area of the 747 building is being provided in PV on the garage. A good gesture towards sustainability and kind of net zero benefits and the vision of the city has, which is wonderful. And these are some more images looking down the 5th Street corridor, again, acknowledging the step back of the building relative to the scale of the residential across the street, looking again at the landscape, at the ground plane, pedestrian zone. And the other piece that we'd like to focus on briefly before I hand it off to the Skidmore team is really just the fact that the team is exercising transportation demand management strategies to try and minimize the amount of parking dependency that are at the site by incentivizing alternative modes of transportation, bike share, bicycle parking, transit access, transit subsidies to future employees and the like. One of the things that we always try and remind people of is a lot of traffic and congestion is really caused by people looking for parking. So this project is really trying to minimize the amount of traffic congestion that would be experienced in the adjacent residential neighborhoods and on the city streets by getting those folks that are coming to this project, well over 500 new employees to the area just visiting the Steelway project alone, getting them off the street and into the parking facility and or accommodating them via the other multi-modes to get to the project to activate the overall development. So with that, I'd like to hand it off to Mark Schwetman with Skidmore, Ings and Merrill to discuss the lab office project. Mark?
Thanks, Reggie. Well, I will share my screen. I apologize if I'm a little bit hard to hear today. I'm getting over a cold that left me with a little bit less voice than normal. So thank you all. And I'll walk you through 747 Bancroft. As mentioned, it's part of a larger master plan project by Steelwave, which includes multiple adaptively reused buildings along 4th Street and the aforementioned parking garage. For 747 proper, the proposal provides 295 parking spaces, which is just slightly in excess of the required parking of 272. But we think that it is appropriate because of the type of jobs these R&D and mixed manufacturing buildings create, which are jobs that actually are available to a pretty wide range of educational backgrounds. They often work off hours and often come from locations that transit is not as available. So in fact, the parking being provided is actually in between the ratio that would be required if it were mixed manufacturing versus all R&D. As mentioned, some of the adaptive reuse projects are already underway with excellent results. A couple examples of those. So 747 itself is a new 3-story concrete frame building expected to be LEED Gold. It's one of the Bay Area's first all-electric lab buildings. And it sits kind of right in the middle of the mixed-use light industrial zone, about a block west from the transition to mixed-use residential, and has an overall footprint which is very consistent with the scale of the industrial buildings in the neighborhood. The existing public realm along 4th Street is somewhat unimproved with above ground utilities, very little street landscaping, very little street furniture, relatively narrow sidewalks. So the project proposes extensive improvements here, bulb outs, bin block crossings, sidewalk landscaping, as well as landscaping up against the building, plus the usual street furniture to really create a more pedestrian friendly street that ties the two sides of the blocks together. We think that those green sidewalks are nicely integrated into the building, which features flow-through planters for stormwater treatment at its base, which then integrate with the building's columns and footings, which are allowed to have plants grow up them. The overall site plan of the building was really considered to maximize both public frontage as well as the introduction of a small new park along 4th Street, really setting the parking as far back from the public places as possible and minimizing the impact of traffic in and out. This site plan shows the new plaza on the left, lobby in the center, which connects through the block, creating visual porosity and connection, and then the service and vehicular access on the lower right side of the page from Bancroft. The building's design reflects the workmanlike industrial character of the neighborhood, relatively simple expression of the building's concrete frame structure, enlivened at its corners and bases and entries by special elements like balconies, canopies, and green elements. I really want to thank the design review committee for what I think was a fantastic collaboration. You see on the left, the building we initially brought them, and on the right, the building proposed today, which I think is in all ways a superior building while keeping the spirit of the original concept. As an example, through that process, we added green to the base of the building, added some rich sculptural details to the structural concrete, to the window frames. And then finally, in conclusion, we are incorporating bird-safe glass, UV fritted glass along the entire western frontage of the building. And then for the remainder of the buildings, we've selected additional measures from the draft guidelines like recessed glazing and light colored interior shade standards. So with
Sorry,
that,
it's been about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It's been 10 minutes.
With that, I'm finished. Thank you.
I was going to cut him off about 10 seconds earlier, but I thought I'd let him finish the bird safe class. But I think he got his point across. So that's great. Thank you. now we'll take questions for the applicant. And once that's exhausted, we will hear from the public. So Igor.
Thank you. Well, you know the key to my heart is solar. So thank you for going above and beyond the minimum requirements for PV. And there's a lot to like in this building. I have two questions. Since it's likely most of the comments today will be on whether, well, you know, what the feasibility might be of doing bird safe glass around the entire building. I just wanted to pose this either now or you can answer this later, but what would be the cost delta to you between what you're already doing as far as other mitigations from the best practices menu versus just doing what you're doing on the west side, but doing it for the windows on the entire project? So that's question number one. Question number two, you know, you mentioned adaptive reuse, and I'm still, I take it, you know, you did the analysis and the parking you're requesting is the parking that you need. But my question is, would you consider, or what is your plan should the project in fact become underparked and I'm sorry, if it turns out that the demand for parking is less than the parking spaces that you're asking us to approve, do you envision that as being usable space? And if so, what are your thoughts on that? Personally, I tend to be compelled by both the DRC recommendation and the comments we've gotten. It does seem like a lot of parking, but that was going to be my second question.
Why don't I start by answering Steve Dunn, answering the question, the second question, which was regarding the parking. As 600 Addison has its R&D, it's 2 per 1,000 parking. And we have a life science uses here, including manufacturing and R&D. And the light manufacturing parking ratios are 1 per 1,000. We have a tenant that's a good example already, Bolt Threads, who is a manufacturer, but they utilize their space at 2 per 1,000. So what we're trying to say is that we really need the parking to park the tenants that we're going to have or intend to have. And in fact, if we don't get the parking, I'm not sure if we would get the tenants. So the tenants that we have secured on phase one, we've secured it under the understanding they'll get 2 per 1,000 parking, approximate there. We're actually slightly less. We're at 1.81.
Mr. Dunn, I believe the question, sorry to interrupt, I believe the question was, what is your plan if it turns out the project is overparked?
No, he asked.
Thank you. That was the question.
Oh, that's it. If it's overparked, then we're happy to open it up to, you know, public parking for that portion that's not utilized. We don't believe that's going to be the case, but we know that there is parking demand in the area. We've as I think you've got some testimonials from some letters of the community that want the parking. But yeah, we don't think that we'll be overparked. I guess is we're trying to self-park. We're not really motivated to spend. It's $46,000 a stall, okay. So we wouldn't build parking if we didn't think we absolutely required it.
So yeah, so the answer is you're going to open it up to the public if that happens.
We would open it up to the public to then offer them, you know, for paid parking.
Great. And Igor, second question.
Answers first.
Yeah.
His first question was to quantify the cost of what it would be, I believe, to take the other 3 sides of the buildings and add.
Well, yeah, is that something that you would seriously consider doing?
We're not seriously considering that. It is. I don't have the number on top of my head, candidly, but it's a big number. It's a significant difference. We can follow up with that if that's an economical analysis of that, but it's significant enough that it could compromise the project from happening.
Steve, if I could add the order of magnitude we have from the general contractor for the portion that we are doing, the delta is it's about $100,000 for the one side. So the delta for the overall project would, presumably be several $100,000. We didn't get that exact number, but it's probably pretty close.
Okay, thank you. And if I may, and I promise this will be my last question, but can you walk us through, because I think this is important for the public to also hear, what are the specific mitigation measures that you're doing for the residual three sides that are not the west facing side of the building for bird safe?
Yeah, Mark, if you can try to take that one on.
Yeah, sure. So the draft guidelines, as well as guidelines for many other cities, have a range of mitigation measures, with obviously the reduction of glass size and bird safe glass being at the top of the list. But other elements include the recessing of the glazing. So as shown here, you can see that when the building is viewed obliquely, you see the side of the concrete piers. And as you look further and further away of the building, you'll see that you see less and less glass. So for example, in the distance here of the side, which is not facing the water, you see actually almost entirely solid material. And that's a combination of the fact that the glass is recessed, but also that we have a metal fin on the front of the window mullions there. Secondly, the building will have consistently provided light colored shades behind. What the light colored shades do is they reflect light back out and reduce the reflection of the sky in the glass. So none of these will completely remove the reflectiveness of the glass, obviously, but what they do from a distance is reduce the amount of reflection that could confuse birds. So these are all measures that the draft guidelines allow. But in light of the mitigation measure and the public comment, we're proposing that in addition to these, the entire west face of the building use the UV pattern glass.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, that was all of Igor's questions. Kimberly Gaffney.
Hi. So I just have one question, and it might be for staff too. But my question is there anything being done on 6th Street, especially on like 6th and Bancroft, regarding like pedestrian walkways or any kind of pedestrian safety to help that flow out of the building area?
Yeah, Kimberly, I appreciate you asking that question. It just came up, as a matter of fact, last week. The council member, Taplin, approached us with a project that he has for 6th and Alston to have a crossing, a lighted, crossing there, with the domes. And so we have agreed that if the project's approved, that we'll pay for that. That's a $40,000 crossing that we've agreed to commit 100% to.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions? Yes, Stuffy.
Hi, thank you. Steve, could you maybe briefly speak upon any community engagement you may or may not have had with Ohlone people and representatives and neighbors?
Yes, great question. In fact, Mark, as I'm stating that, if you want to pull up maybe the plan, we have been in discussions with the Ohlone tribe, and they have encouraged us. We have a park that we are installing right in the south west corner of our site, which it's an Ohlone garden, which is directly across from the Ohlone prayer grounds that 600 Addison's providing. So there's actually, it's not directly connected because of the railroad, but they're right across from each other, and they're very happy and excited about this.
Thank you. Michael Thompson.
In our packet, there was I saw a number of 300 jobs created by this project. And I thought I saw in the presentation that there was a different number of jobs created. And I'm wondering if someone could explain that a little bit.
Yeah, we're confident that it'll be about 500 jobs, and I think that was the number you just last saw. We think it could be up to 600, but the 500 kind of represents the number by which is about 2 per 1,000 of the cars that we're talking about, and that's the ratio that we're seeing in the first 3 tenants that we're excited to have coming into phase 1. So it's been trued out that the market is there. We're just finishing the project that's pre-leased on the first phase. So that's very exciting.
All right. Any other questions for the applicant team or staff? Okay, well, I'll thank the applicant team for your presentation and answering our questions. We're going to turn our attention now to the public. And we can demote them back to attendee. And then I think you're probably familiar with the process, but we're going to hear from the public. And then once everyone from the public has had a chance to comment, we'll bring the applicants back to respond. They'll have a limited amount of time to respond to any issues that were raised by the public. And so public, if you have questions that weren't answered just now, feel free to ask them as part of your comments, and we'll give a little space for the applicants to answer them for you. Okay, so I'm going to ask attendees, work with me here, trying to run a good meeting, okay? Can everybody who would like to speak, please raise your hand right now? I need to get an idea of how many speakers we're going to have. I want to give you guys the most amount of time without making the meeting go too long. Okay, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, that's not too bad. So I'm going to go ahead and give everybody 2 minutes, which is actually the normal amount of time. If you would like more time, as I mentioned before, the applicant did get double time because it's actually 2 projects. If you feel like you have more to say that you can't say in 2 minutes, just say, hey, I'd like to take take a little more time, and I'm willing to be flexible. I think 2 minutes is reasonable for the amount of speakers we have, and usually people can say what they need to say in 2 minutes or less. Less is totally fine, by the way. But I just want to acknowledge that, in fairness, if you need more time than that, I'm willing to grant it. Just to, just say, hey, I'd like a little more time. Maximum 4 minutes, obviously. But if everyone got 4 minutes, we'd be here very, very late, which isn't equitable. So that said, I'm going to start recognizing members of the public. We'll put the timer up, and we'll default it to 2 minutes. And hold on. Every time someone shares their screen, it makes my participants box go away. Okay, so Shirley B., you are first, and next is Aaron D. All right, Shirley. What happened? There we go. Shirley B.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Shirley here. I'd like to speak about the 1877 Italianate Victorian duplex at 2212 5th Street. That's a part of this project. It's one of the oldest structures in the city, and
so this is the one that's proposed for demolition?
It's proposed for demolition.
Right.
And we learned about it through an advertisement on Berkeley's side in April, which, if you speak with anybody in permitting, it takes at least a year to move a building. And this building is beautiful. I've been inside. It's well made. It's a gorgeous building, and it adds so much to the character of Berkeley architecture. And yet it's going to be demolished because we didn't have time to get the permits together to move it. I mean, I tried. I had a lot of meetings with Justin done, and why it was completely a waste of time. So I'd like to just comment on what I've learned about that. This house is worth saving. It's beautiful. It's 2 units of housing. It's a 2,200 square foot house. It could actually probably become a fourplex. we have room in our front yard on MLK right across the street from Berkeley High. So it's literally 1.6 miles away from the site where it's at right now. And we could preserve a piece of Berkeley history. You know, we could have housing. We wouldn't be sending this, you know, crushing this and sending it to the landfill. It's a horrific waste. And okay, where am I with my notes here? So I would like to suggest as a condition of future demolition permits, and I don't know if this is the proper platform, but whatever, of say, I'd like to have a condition would be that structures over 100 years must be publicly offered early in the process. According to Mr. Dunn, they've been working on this project for almost 3 years. So they must have known that it was, this house had to go. I'd like some more, just a bit more time.
Yeah, we just redid it. Go ahead, finish your.
My plea at this point is that time be provided to allow for us to move this building into our front yard on MLK, or at least to a parking lot nearby. You know, so far we're getting crickets, and it's worth doing, and we're set up, we've been waiting for a building like this to move, and it's just such a crying shame to just destroy something like this. It's not sustainable. The building's historical, you know, and it's beautiful, and it's housing. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Next up, we have Aaron Deem, followed by Rusty.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me? Is my volume loud enough?
I hear you just fine.
Okay, good. Thanks for taking my comment. So we know that this project lies within the Pacific Flyway, which is a major north-south migratory bird corridor, and we know that the project is just 600 feet from Aquatic Park. Now, the MMD says the impact of this project on birds is significant. It acknowledges it. It says it's a substantial adverse effect. And in response, it proposes to the mitigation measure Bio 1 to reduce the impact to less than significant by requiring the installation of bird safe glass on 90% or less of just the west side, which is what we just learned. And it does not require bird safe glass on any of the other sides. And I believe this mitigation is inadequate. There is a fair argument that a significant impact remains on this migratory pathway, and here's why. Because the American Bird Conservancy is the recognized authority on bird collisions. And in fact, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, which this MMD references, if you go read the U.S. Fish and Wildlife document, it's all referencing American Bird Conservancy. They are the leaders. And they recommend only 3 ordinances: Toronto, New York City, and Mountain View's Bayshore Precise Plan. And in those ordinances, they require bird safe glass on all sides of a building from the ground level up. So moreover, the MMD offers no substantial evidence that birds would fly only into the windows on the west side. So there really is a fair argument that birds could collide into the north, south, and east sides. And on top of that, the project will add 69 new trees and native vegetation around the building, which will expand and create habitat for the birds. So without bird safe glass on all sides, this could result in a significant impact on migratory birds. So please revisit the Bio 1, please read it. It does not say all windows, it just says windows. Can I have just a bit more time?
Go ahead.
And that the treatments be permanent, and that they be required for all 4 sides of the building from the ground to the top to properly mitigate and reduce the impact on migratory birds to less than significant. The applicant, I appreciated the questions about the cost, but the other question I would like to have is what percentage of the total cost of this entire project do these windows represent? If you put in those terms, so not just the windows, but what percentage of the total cost? I would also very much encourage you to look at the American Bird Conservancy 3 recommended guidelines, and especially talk with Golden Gate Audubon Society. We have a new executive director there, and he actually co-authored the ordinance that New York City adopted. So we have experts right here who know how to build buildings that will protect the birds that we love. They're right here in our beautiful aquatic park. And this mitigation measure right now with just the west facing side is inadequate. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Next up is Rusty, followed by Cameron Wu.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Rusty.
I just want to quickly note that the aquatic park is a really special case. It's very much like a riparian corridor, which is like, in other words, like a stream-side woodland. There is no stream, it's a lagoon, but the orientation is north-south. It's really a busy place, especially during migration, spring and fall migration for passerines, small songbirds. And so it's not just an ordinary green belt, green place. It's actually a very busy place. And so the exposure is way more than typical. The risk exposure is way more than typical for a site like this. And yeah, I would echo Aaron's request that Bio 1 be applied to the entire building. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rusty. I think that's where Alden, our resident peregrine falcon, likes to go hunting, I've heard. So another danger we can't do anything about. All right, next is Cameron Wu, followed by Claudia. Cameron, you're up.
Thanks for allowing me to speak. My name is Cameron Wu. I'm a resident of West Berkeley, and I'm speaking solely as a citizen of Berkeley and not representing any organization or body. While I support much of the commercial development poised to begin in West Berkeley, I'm here tonight to ask that this board work closely with the planning department of the city to oversee these West Berkeley projects and weigh the cumulative impact of all this development, including the Bancroft development and the Fifth Street Garage, plus 4 or 5 additional projects that are in the early planning stages. It's very important that some body concern themselves with the impact on the environment, increases in traffic, that they be mindful of the stress and strain on municipal infrastructure, including city parks, in this case, aquatic park. We desperately need some entity to take responsibility for planning for the large amount of development that is happening all at once in West Berkeley. It's the people and wildlife of West Berkeley that will suffer the negative consequences if projects are left to develop without proper oversight. I fear that there's no planning happening in City Hall, no vision, and no protection from the actions of commercial interests. The CEQA process on this project alone was fraught with difficulty, relying on outdated data and secondhand information and neglecting the impact of traffic per the changing rules of CEQA. I'll give you that. The 2 city planners working on this project, unfortunately, left the city planning department days before the CEQA doc was issued, and making them unavailable to answer for the recommended MND. The 3rd city planner was on vacation and unreachable. Fortunately, Sharon Gong stepped in, and that is a very positive step forward, and I appreciate her presence. But I believe that greater integration of all these projects is sorely needed. More input from residents and more transparent processes in order. Thank you very much.
Oh, great. Thank you. I was doing that to have to reset the timer, but thank you very much for your comments. Next up is Claudia, followed by Nathan Hood. Claudia, you're recognized.
Hi, my name is Claudia Kopczynska, and don't blame me for not trying the name, but I sort of want to echo what Cameron just said, but I want to offer my comments as an advocate for Aquatic Park. And while I do serve as D2's Parks Commissioner, I am not speaking as a representative of that commission tonight, but rather as a 30-year-long resident and concerned citizen of West Berkeley. I would like this board to consider is the topic of cumulative effects of this development and others, such as the upcoming 700 Grayson might have on the whole area of West Berkeley and Aquatic Park specifically. I believe that not enough due diligence was exercised before the MFD was issued. And it seems like CEQA doesn't consider cumulative effects as well. Unlike a justifiably popular Berkeley Commons project went to many commissions and community groups, including my commission multiple times, and is offering Aquatic Park a very generous mitigation fee. The lab project isn't, as far as I know. While I agree it fits within the scope and goal of the West Berkeley plan, it still will have its own impacts, as well as with these other projects, including Bear, Grace, and Addison, when they'll have these huge impacts on the park that are, and definitely on the already high congested 6th Street traffic corridor. While it seems to be challenging to determine future impacts that any development might have on Aquatic Park, an acknowledgement that there will be such impacts that are inevitable, I believe, is not too much to ask. So I want to suggest that this development offer a contribution to the Parks Department for mitigation measures and other improvements that this park is so badly in the need of. I do welcome the streetscape improvements that the lab will bring to 4th Street, but hope that they're also open to my friendly suggestion of being a good and generous neighbor as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Claudia K. All right, next up is Nathan Hood, followed by Richard Rogers.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can.
All right, thanks. Good evening, everyone. I am Nathan Hood. I'm a nearby resident on 7th Street, and my family and I frequent Aquatic Park several times a week. And start off by saying, excited to see the project come together. You know, still some kinks to work out, but I think it's going to overall be a benefit for the community. But I did have a couple questions, and if there was time, hoping I could hear some more detail about them. So one of the board members' questions was about, streetscape, traffic, pedestrian improvements on 6th Street, and the developer mentioned Alston and 6th. I was hoping to confirm if the developer actually meant Addison and 6th. And in addition to that, was hoping to hear more about exactly what we'll get for $40,000, or how big of, like, what percentage of that, what percentage 40,000 is of the total cost to make the improvements there. That was one question. And then I think the board member also asked about the intersection of Bancroft. I was wondering if any improvements were going to be made to Bancroft as well, which currently only has stop signs in 2 directions, not all 4. And then the final question I had was, I went to one of the community site walks, or at least the introductory meeting portion of it a couple months back, and there were some talks about this developer partnering with the Berkeley Commons developer to provide some sort of shuttle from BART. I was hoping to hear more about the progress on that front. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Hopefully we can get those questions answered for you at the end of public comment. Next up, we have Richard Rogers, followed by Sally Nelson.
Hello, yes, thank you. Bear with me, I'm suffering from severe allergies, so my voice is a bit wonky.
You're just fine.
Quick procedural remark. I came on very early on asking about the lack of a list of participants and a lack of a chat space. And I feel that this meeting has been badly hampered by the lack of those tools. First of all, this is a public meeting, so it's only appropriate that we know who's there. Secondly, a lot of the questions and other issues that came up during the meeting could have been handled offline in the chat space, which would have made the meeting much more efficient for everyone involved. So I just put that down for future. I'm speaking as a neighbor of this phase 2, the garage. I live on 5th Street, almost across from the entrance of that facility. I participated in the site visit that was alluded to by Steve Dunn earlier. Although we welcomed the changes they made to the garage design, I would be far from agreeing with him that we embraced their ideas. Far from it. We still have extreme problems with that facility. We really do. I wrote a very lengthy set of comments and questions based on the LSA that was the LSA generated mitigated negative declaration. And I received just today comments back from LSA about that. It was submitted months ago. I would ask Sharon Gong withhold my revised comments that I mailed her earlier today, so that I can make a further set of changes based on the notes that I got back from LSA. A lot of my confusion was based on very obtuse language in the MND and a lack of clear statements about the assumptions they made for various calculations. We are very extremely worried about noise, congestion, safety, pollution, a bunch of the issues that arise from this project. And we remain so even after the design changes. I would also further Cameron Wu's comments, because this project needs to be said in a much broader context. And I see my time's about to run out. Please up me if you would, please.
You can take a little more time if you like.
Okay. We really need to be thinking about urban design in a broad sense here. We look at the 491 parking spaces that we're talking about with the lab project, the phase 2. The Grayson project that's in proposal stages, I think, for 325. The Edison's facility, which has 943. We're just shy of 2,000 parking spaces in this neighborhood, new ones. And we're not even mentioning the Bayer project that's in the works that Steve Buckley referred to earlier. I'll tell you, a lot of the neighbors there have the sense that we are being sacrificed somehow, unthinkingly, and that our neighborhood's being turned into a giant parking facility for this part of, for benefit Berkeley financially, but destroy urban quality of life for many people, not just our immediate neighborhood. So I would beg you to step back from this and consider that we really need an urban design plan here. We should be bold. This is an opportunity. If we don't, we're saving misery, a lot of misery for the future. And I say that very sincerely. I will send back a revised set of comments about the LSA as soon as I can. And gosh, I know I'm forgetting to mention some things here. I would also support Aaron's comments earlier about the bird safe glass. It strikes me that if the figure that was mentioned earlier of roughly $200,000 was accurate, if I understood that properly, that is pocket change for a project of this scale and expense. I don't know why we're even arguing about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments and for your feedback about the meeting. I wondered that about the chat as well, so we'll look into that. Okay, next up we have Sally Nelson, followed by Kelly Hammergren. Sally, you're up.
My name is Sally Nelson. I've lived in Berkeley since 1977. The remarks that I prepared, I realized that most of you are already well versed in these things about bird safe glass. But I do want to emphasize emphasize that what makes glass bird safe is if there's ultraviolet reflective paint or patterns or something on the glass, because because regular glass simply reflects clouds and trees, and the birds just crash into the glass thinking that they're flying into the air. And it's the ability for them to see ultraviolet reflective surfaces that enables them to avoid those surfaces. And in the letter that I sent to you, I mentioned a book that's where is it? That's refers to the ability of, it's by Ed Young, called An Immense World, and it refers to birds and all other non-humans having abilities to hear and see what humans can't see. It's a survival mechanism. So I think we do need to put bird safe glass on all sides of all these buildings, because the birds are going to be flying from all different directions if they're resident or if they're migrating. And I really appreciate the amount of work you've been putting into this so far, but I think we need to carry it further. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That book's on my summer reading list, by the way. I'm excited about it.
Good.
Just came out, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he's a wonderful writer. Okay, next up is Kelly Hammergan, followed by Summer Brenner.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, I just dropped my glasses. So when I sent my letter, the pictures that I sent as part of that article disappeared. So I sent another one early this morning that has the pictures in human versus birds, which shows the glass. And I'm so sorry that none of you can see that because it's really important in the bird safe glass to get a full picture. I don't know if you all remember the church that was turned into housing. There's an architect that lives there. He's my new neighbor. I haven't made an appointment with him yet, but we had a short chat, and he builds high rises in Oakland, and we talked about bird safe glass. And he said, I mean, he couldn't believe that we were still struggling over this in Berkeley. And he said, it's like no big deal. It's a little more expensive, but it's not. Doesn't stop the project. So I think we really need to hear more about what part of the cost of bird safe glass is to the entire project, because the west facing side is really not enough. I walked down there tonight, and this is right, practically right on top of Aquatic Park. And so we really need the bird safe glass all the way around. And shades behind the windows really doesn't do it because it's the reflection of the glass, and we need frits that are 4 inches wide and 2 inches tall for the birds to see it and to make it safe. And so those spandrels, or whatever the architect called those dividers that are like feet apart, that does not do anything for bird safety. I need a little bit more time. I want to talk about the parking. I was disappointed that I didn't see the DRC statements with the documents, because DRC in their write-up said, they approved the design of the parking, but they really didn't approve the parking. And that in a city like Berkeley, where we are taking parking away from our apartment buildings because we're trying to get people on transit, it's just contrary to everything that we're doing to have a 412 space parking lot. And Councilmember Taplin has on the agenda, it's going to be up on the 28th, it's on consent to set a maximum of parking. So it would be a maximum of one space, and that it really is to get these big parking lots out of our future, because this is not what we should be doing, is building parking lots. And I was disappointed that all he said was, the architect, that the parking will be opened up for public parking, because when we had that meeting at the DRC, the neighbors were really upset about this parking lot coming into the neighborhood and all these cars. They didn't talk about not enough parking on the street. They talked about the intrusion into the area of all this parking, and really didn't want that big lot. So I think those are really my main points. Thank you for giving me the extra time. And we really do need the bird safe glass on all 4 sides. We can't tell the birds only to fly from the west. They're going to fly in all directions. This is a migratory flyway. And we just need to follow the MND for the fish and wildlife. That refers to the American Bird Conservancy. And unfortunately, the person assigned doesn't know about the American Bird Conservancy. I can talk more about Stephen Buckley's comment if you need it.
That's okay. Thank you, Karen. Thank you very much, Kelly. I appreciate your comments as always. Next up is Summer Brenner, followed by Keith Johnson. Summer? Hey, Summer, are you there? If you're talking, you're muted. Yep. Hello? I see you raising your hand, Summer. I've actually allowed you to talk, so if you just unmute, we should be able to hear you. Well, I'll tell you what, Summer, I'm going to let Keith go, and we'll give you another chance after Keith is done talking, okay? We do want to hear from you, Summer, so hopefully we'll get to. Keith, you are up. Keith Johnson.
Thank you very much. And my comment is mainly about the bird safe glass issue. I appreciate the clarification that the mitigation for this building is to only provide bird safe glass on the west side. And also, I was impressed by the list of very expensive alternative methods of providing a bird safe glass, and that the builder has chosen the least expensive and probably the least effective of those options. I wanted to note that in the response to the DRC, number D4, which is on page 177 of your packet, this response claims that all windows of the proposed buildings would be required to include external film and/or glass coverings designed to reduce bird strikes. This was the response to the DRC, I believe. This response seems to recognize that all windows should be treated, but the Bio 1 mitigation does not do so. I personally would recommend that the language in the mitigation measure be updated to say all windows on all sides. There are a couple of points about this that I also find highly puzzling and just don't make sense to me. One is that, as has been mentioned repeatedly, that birds fly both west to east and east to west, and I don't understand why covering or protecting a building on the west side is an adequate mitigation in a migratory flyway. The other part of this that is confusing to me has to do with the cost. I may have written it down wrong, but I thought that we were told that the cost would be $700,000. With $100,000 is what it costs currently for the one side, one of the long sides of the building, to be treated. So now we have the other long side should be just another 100,000. You know, we're looking at maybe. Well, I'd like to get a clarification on the math on that. The numbers didn't add up to me, and I think we were being given a kind of overestimate on how difficult, how expensive it would be to provide this total mitigation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Keith. So that is it for hand raised. We lost Summer. Summer, if you raise your hand right now, I'd be happy to recognize you. We've got, Gail Alcock, who we heard from earlier, but not this time. So, Gail, I would love to hear what you have to say. You're recognized.
I can speak really briefly, so Summer can have my time, but
Go ahead, you got 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Yeah, Erin sounds like she had a good grip on who knows best about what is bird safety. And when the developer spoke, he didn't. I was just going to ask, did he run this by the people that know what's happening, like the Conservancy and the bird societies? And he didn't reference any experts when he said when he showed us what he was doing on the other sides of the building. So then I just think that was good to hear what Erin had to say, and I don't have any more information than that, except I did see the graphic, which is really vivid, the graphic that shows what a bird sees. And just let me speak about that. When you see what a bird sees, you realize that a bird is really important, and you don't want to sacrifice a bird. And there's always going to be money, and there's always going to be buildings, and there's always going to be all this stuff we do, but there's not always going to be birds. Just like, do you remember when there were lots of butterflies? You're not as old as me, you probably don't. But there's going to be a time when there aren't any birds. if we keep going like this. So seriously, you have to think of it as diamonds, or just don't think of a bird. Think of something that's really valuable, and just imagine, do you want to see a bird drop dead in front of your window? Okay, that's about all I have to say.
Thank you very much. All right, so that is it for our speakers. Yeah, go ahead, Samantha. Are you going to remind me about the captioner break?
Yes, it's 8:58.
I'm on it.
Awesome.
The next thing I was going to say. I have a whole plan, but I appreciate it. For the public who's not familiar with our ways, we always take a break for the captioner so they can rest their fingers every 2 hours. So we're going to do that in a minute. But before we do that, well, I should say after we do that, we're going to bring the applicant team back up to answer any questions and say anything else they want to say. I was taking notes while the public spoke, so I'm just going to read a summary of the questions that were brought up, and hopefully the applicant team during the break will do whatever they need to do to be able to answer those questions. You don't have to, but it's helpful for the process and good for the public. And I certainly want to hear the answers to many of these questions as well. So we had a question about is it possible to move that duplex rather than demolish it? If you could speak to that. What is the percentage cost? Well, we would like clarification on the actual cost of making all 4 windows bird safe glass, and also specifically what is the percentage of the total cost of the project? Is it Addison or Alston Street with the bulb out? Is anything happening on the Bancroft intersection? Talk about plans for a shuttle to BART. And then lastly, the last one I jotted down was, it was implied in the last speaker's question, who did you consult? What experts did you consult in trying to figure out about bird safe glass? So I'm sorry, I apologize if I missed it. Those are some of the very specific questions that were asked. I jotted down. But we'd love to hear your answers to those and anything else that was brought up after the break. Oh dear, Mr. Murphy, I'm seeing another hand up. We were just about to go to captioner break. I'll tell you what, Michael Murphy, we'll hear from you after the break. If you like, if you raise your hand up again at 9:10, we'll hear from you, and then we'll have the applicant. But we do have to take the break now. So we will come back at 9:10. Thank you, captioners. I hope you enjoy your 10-minute break. See everyone at 9:10.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Let's all come back, shall we? Okay, I guess, yeah, some people had their cameras off, so I'll assume everybody's back. Welcome back to the ZAB meeting. Captioners, I hope you are rested and ready to go. So where we left off, I believe we were about to do the applicant's response, but one member of the public did raise their hand, and I would love to hear from them. If you, whoever that was, if you want to raise your hand again. Now, this is the last chance. After this, we're going to close this part of the public hearing. So this is the last call for public comment. I'm not seeing anyone raise their hands, so I am going to move on to the applicant's response now. Okay, so applicant team, let's give you, we usually do 3, so we'll give you 6 minutes to respond. You can use this time however you like, but as I said before, I recommend you use it to respond to the issues and questions that were raised during public comment. Go. Oh, they're here, right? Are they here? Actually, they're not here, are they?
They are. I'm trying to bring them in. There's this really long lag that I'm experiencing when I try to promote people.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah, I see Stephen has his hand raised.
Maybe it's working better for you. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm trying to promote Steve, but
I just hit allow to talk. That doesn't quite promote him, but as long as he doesn't want to share his screen. And of course, anyone else from the applicant team is welcome to speak as well.
Okay, Steve Dunn is now on.
Yeah.
And who are we missing, Steve?
Mark Schwetman. I think the two of us can probably, basically handle most of these. I hope I've got them all. And I'll just start tackling them right now. Is Mark?
He's appeared in the boxes.
Okay.
That's good.
First of all, just a couple quick comments on the duplex. It was deemed to be uninhabitable by the city and the consultants. And we have tried to facilitate this to actually occur. We can't do much about what the rules are at the city and how long or what process it has to take to go through a use permit, because that is what's required today, which would probably take about a year. And this project cannot, wait for a year to proceed. It's very, very costly to do so. So that's just a quick answer on the house. By the way, it is Addison and 6th. I stand corrected. I said Alston. I apologize. We do have, we're making arrangements to have a BART shuttle, and we're going to be working in cooperation with 600 Addison. So it should be very, very effective. And we're looking forward to providing that. Experts on the bird glass. So, obviously we don't have an ordinance to follow with the city in regards to that. They're obviously not in place yet. We have used guidelines, as you saw. Mark really presented that, and I don't know if Mark's on right now to speak to it. But we always do look to consultants to advise us, and that's how we came up with our mitigations. And again, we were kind of recommended to have 90% on the west, and we went 100%. And we did add the tree grove as a mitigation, actually, to keep birds, from going directly in the glass. They'll go to the trees. But I think Mark appropriately provided all the other mitigations that we've added to the design to accommodate that. One other thing on the house. To move that house, you'd have to slice it into 3 to get underneath power lines that exist in the city. And then to put it back together, it's not in a strong enough structural position to be able to do so. So even though we were trying to facilitate it, I don't think, and even if the city was able to accommodate a quick process of getting it to move, I don't know if it was actually feasible in the end anyway. What else am I missing?
What if we could get clarification on how much it would cost to make all 4 windows bird safe, and what percentage of the project the cost?
Yeah, we don't. I don't know the answer to that, so I'm just going to be providing a guesstimate based upon the costs that I've seen through our meetings. I think it's in a range of $300,000 to $500,000, and this project is. Let me think about this.
Got my calculator here, if it helps.
It's probably in the order of I'm calculating the whole project. Probably about $80 million. So it's not important to the percentage, it's important to the return. It obviously affects whether we can even get financing, or whether a tenant's rent can accommodate a return that's satisfactory enough for the market. So that is a big number. Just
Well, just FYI, based on what you just said, it's 0.6% approximately. Just to answer that question.
Yeah, which is a big effect on the return.
Okay.
Yeah. And on Bancroft, we upgraded the sidewalks and all the trees, but there is no quote unquote mitigations or anything that were required for us to do beyond that. But we've already put it in phase 1 on Bancroft, and we plan to do the same on the frontage of Bancroft on phase 3. I think I hit on everything.
Okay, and you can feel free to add anything else you'd like. I think you have 1 minute and 20 seconds left. You don't have to, but it's your right to say what you got to say.
Oh yeah, there is one other thing. So another thing we heard from our DRC meetings from the public was, a potential concern about, hey, the 5th Street, we'd rather not have as much traffic coming in and out of that as 4th Street. It's really important that we have both, because it mitigates, the overall traffic. It dissipates it. But what we have agreed to do is that once it goes dark at night, we will close off the 5th Street parking garage side, so that no lights would be coming out of that garage facing the public. So we did make that accommodation as well.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for those responses. Are there any last questions for the applicant team before I close the public hearing? Yeah. Deborah Sanderson. You're muted, Deborah.
I wanted you to clarify that and this may be the LSA person answering this question. Back in the dark ages, we did cumulative analysis of any project that was already existing and those that were also proposed, so that we had full cumulative traffic analysis, and then you did parking, which we don't do now. I haven't kept up with the changes in CEQA, but can you address how or if any cumulative analysis was done with the negative deck?
Sure. So Matthew Wiswell with LSA. Good evening, ZAB members. Yeah, there is a cumulative analysis in the ISMND. It's in the very last section. I believe it's section 3.21 or 22. It's called Mandatory Findings of Significance, where we discuss this project in context with other projects that are developed in the city, and why this project and its specific impacts wouldn't combine with impacts of other projects to result in cumulative impacts.
Did that include traffic?
So that's a good question. typically when people think about cumulative traffic impacts, it's about level of service. However, as of a couple years ago, level of service is no longer a CEQA threshold, right? So we've moved to VMT. So yes, VMT does account for cumulative impacts. It's all based on a travel demand model that the city has set up, and so as projects get added in, model years get run out to 2040 or so, which determines your cumulative impacts.
Okay. I have another question on the shuttle. I know in Emeryville that some of the shuttles, the shuttle that they run there among the labs, they've made it available to the local residents in the area. Have you considered making that provision for this shuttle in one of the several labs that are in the Berkeley, West Berkeley area?
Yeah, we're open to considering that. Right now, in working with 600 Addison, we've got to evaluate, the insurances for that kind of stuff, as well as the stops. But this BART connection will go to the North Berkeley BART station, as opposed to Ashby, which is where Emory Go Round goes to. So you could walk 2 blocks down to catch the Emory Go Round, so you could go to Ashby if you chose to, but ours will specifically go to the North Berkeley BART station.
Would you consider some requirement to advertise the availability of that? I think most people don't know in the area that that's an option. I know I'm getting into the nitty gritty, and I apologize for that, but now's the time.
Don't apologize. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, we're open to considering all that. We just have to look at, like I said, there's insurance for those who ride it and all that kind of stuff. So we have to look just on what impacts that has.
Well, the Emory Go Round is already doing this, so they should be able to give you some.
No, that's correct. And there's many.
They should have good insurance and cost analysis. They've done it for a long time.
And we have talked to them. They just have a lot more participants in the program.
Mm-hmm.
Where this particular area right now, it would just be us and 600 Addison, but we'd invite others to work with us.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Igor Tregub.
Thank you. Yeah, just a couple of questions. Apologize for the first one being kind of in the weeds, but can you clarify the 100,000 per side cost differential you provided? Was that compared to the mitigation measures you're already taking, or was that just the straight up cost per side?
Again, we are just making a ballpark estimate, based upon us being on the phone here. It was only for that. It wasn't for all the other mitigations. It was only for the bird safe class specifically.
Okay, great. And then you may have already mentioned this, but I'm gonna ask in a different way. I'm gonna ask a different question. I presume, let me know if my assumption is correct or not, that it's probably around the clock operations, but there may be less parking intensity or demand at night. Would you consider, to the extent that parking is available or there's less parking demand than what has been predicted, making the spaces with EV charging infrastructure available to neighbors, particularly overnight, as long as they get their cars out by the end of the night?
Yeah, we'd be open to considering that. The one thing that's really interesting that I think it's noteworthy is that the life science employment sector does work different hours, and they don't always work as conventionally as a bank, say. and there may be people that work during the evenings or in the morning. So it's a very different kind of workforce. And so we have to take that into consideration. And until the actual tenants are there, we don't know exactly how they're gonna work. But we're very open. We don't want to waste spaces, so to speak. So we are open to, if we're not using the stalls, to open it to the public.
Thank you.
All right, next up, Carrie Olson.
Thank you. I'm wondering who might answer this question for me. Sorry, it might be the applicant, it might be staff. I'd like to know exactly what we approved for Berkeley Commons for bird safe glass. Was it just the west side or was it the entire building?
I could look into that. I'll have to look up the approval for that and find out for you.
That's great. If you could look that up before a motion is made, I would appreciate it.
Okay.
And Sharon, when you have that info, just butt in.
Okay.
We're eager for it.
All right, great.
That's really good. No one has brought this up at all, but I'm wondering, and it might be in this big document and I just couldn't find it. The railway crossing that goes between your building and along Bancroft and Aquatic Park, are there any plans to make that more pedestrian safe?
There are, but it's candidly not at our project level. 600 Addison has numerous requirements that they had to do because their one-way traffic actually, by the way, it will be one way from their side coming up Bancroft. And they do have mitigations that are required for that upgrade.
I appreciate that. That's talking about vehicle traffic. I'm talking about
it's actually for pedestrian safety as well.
I understand it's for pedestrian safety. You're going to have, if this project is approved, a lot of people who will leave that building and walk down to Aquatic Park to have lunch or whatever. And I'm asking if there are any plans for how to make sure that is safe. And I say that because I grew up in Berkeley and I know 2 people who've been killed by a train. So I'm asking you if there's been any thinking about making that pedestrian crossing safer for your pedestrians, for your tenants.
And I think my answer is the same, is that we understand that it will be safer and safe once the 600 Addison improvements go in, but we're happy to, we want it to be safe. So if there are specific things that we can do to make it safer, we would be open to that.
Okay, thank you. And you are throwing out figures about moving that house, that it would take a year to get approval. I'd like to hear that from Steve Buckley. Do you think that would be take a year to get approval on a permit to move that house?
Well, we require a use permit both to remove the house and then also to place it at a new location. And considering that there is no identified location to receive the house, it certainly could take quite a while, even just for an applicant to come forward with a workable plan.
Steve, I think there was one of the commenter who brought this up said that they had a place. I don't know if that changes your answer.
I'm familiar with the proposal of the front yard on Martin Luther King Jr. Way. It's a couple of miles away, and we haven't seen houses moved quite that far. We've seen houses moved maybe 5 or 6 blocks. So I think it's the feasibility is a question, but Yeah, I mean, when I heard about it, I thought it was an interesting proposal. I don't know if there's been a you know, even a schematic design of what it would take to put it on that site. So that's the kind of thing we would engage with the applicant on.
Okay, thank you so much. That's all I have.
So I have, this is Sharon, I have found the mitigation measure for 600 Addison. It looks to be exactly the same as the Bio 1 mitigation for proposed for this project. And what it says is, at a minimum, windows of proposed buildings shall include external film or glass coverings designed to reduce bird strikes. Measures shall incorporate one or more of the following glazing options for 90% of the windows on the west-facing building facade, or a lesser amount if appropriate and agreed by a qualified biologist.
If I could just, just clarify that. So that's in the mitigation measure itself, Bio 1 for both 600 Addison and for the lab. That's bird safe treatments on all windows with additional protections on the western facing at a minimum 90%.
The additional protections being the actual glass that's bird safe as opposed to the other mitigations.
There's a list of potential things, but most of them are, yes, the bird safe glass.
That's only required on the west.
Can you explain that again? I'm sorry.
Sure.
I don't really understand what you're saying.
Sure. So at a minimum, all windows on both buildings, both the 600 Addison project and the lab, require bird safe treatment as defined by the Fish and Wildlife's best practices, which incorporate the American Bird Conservancy's recommendations and study as well. So they include a lot of different things. Fish and Wildlife just released a report, or an updated version of that report in 2021. In addition to those bird safe measures, the bird safe glass is required at a minimum on 90% of the western facades.
Great, thank you so much, both of you. That's really helpful, helpful clarity on that. So I'm gonna put down Matthew and Sharon's hands. Igor has his hand up.
Sharon, that was really helpful. Can you also remind us, the mitigation measure said at a minimum, if you can just pull up at your convenience whether we did the bare minimum or whether we did something more. I'd just be interested in, because I can't remember what the bird safe glass condition was that we ended up ultimately approving.
Oh, that you're saying that was the recommendation, not necessarily what we went with.
Well, the MMD is a requirement in this, but it said at a minimum we could do something more.
Right.
Do something more.
Did we just? Yeah, I don't remember either. I assumed we did that, but Sharon, do you know?
I don't know. Let me see if I can find more information there.
Thanks for looking all the stuff up on the fly. I know that's pretty stressful. So yeah. Okay. Are there any other questions for the applicant? Because Sharon can participate in the conversation anytime. But I'd like to close the public hearing if we're done hearing from the applicant. Deborah, you have a question?
I have one more question. This is on the parking. I'd like the applicant to explain, maybe this is a really simple answer, but explain how you came up with the amount of parking that you wanted. Did you just, that's it. How did you come up with that amount?
Yeah, we have 9 projects in the Bay Area that are life science. So we understand these users' needs. A typical office project would need 4 per thousand parking in the Bay Area or an R&D type of an environment. So we here in Berkeley, in Emeryville, and even on the peninsula, we've done numerous studies And we, in fact, had some testimonials that were submitted by users as well as by the brokers who basically run with these users. So one in practice and one in study, we know that the demand level is 2 per thousand parking, and that's how we got to it. Then in this particular location, we've already done 3 leases, and in those leases, that's what their demand was as well, and needs for their employees was 2 per thousand. One of the tenants had a little bit slightly less, and that's why we can go to the 1.81. So we're trying to keep it to what our need and demand is from the tenants. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, great. Last questions for the applicant. Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing and thank both the applicant team and the members of the public for a really great hearing. We've talked a lot about some really important issues and learned a lot more about this project. So thanks to all of you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks. And now we're going to bring it back to the board for discussion. I can't believe we never talked about the variance. You guys waiting for me to complain about it?
No.
I'm okay with it, actually. So maybe most of you are new. I've made a big deal about variances before. I hate voting for them, but this one's pretty reasonable. I've gotten into some pretty big fights with people about them. Anyway, what do we want to talk about? Dohi.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I didn't want to make a motion yet, and this might sound like a summary of all that's been discussed, but I really appreciated the public discussion and the discussion from colleagues. I guess I wanted to recognize Yes's question earlier this evening about incorporating Ohlone tribes and their input, so I appreciated that. I also thought it was exciting that Councilmember Taplin was having the Addison Street project in regards to traffic and also mitigating the impacts of parking in West Berkeley. And so I appreciated that. I guess I still have some questions around kind of the exact funding numbers around the bird safe glass implementation. And so I'd be happy to hear more elaboration on that. And if the applicant was amenable, as Erin Deem stated in the public speaking, to consult maybe local expertise around bird safe glass, I think that'd be great for more community engagement around that. Yeah, and I also had a question around the duplex and the demolishment of that, because I know a public speaker mentioned, and there's like slight discussion around that. And so, yeah, I really appreciated everyone's input. I think I still have questions around the concerns around traffic and parking, but happy to hear more thoughts on it. But overall, really thankful for all the input.
Okay, great. Thanks, Dohi. Deborah?
Well, I really appreciated, now that we're on this subject, the openness for their shuttle to incorporate members of the public. I think in Emeryville, the residents found it was a tremendous success. It was so successful that other neighborhoods are saying, come here, come here. And that to me is just such a valuable resource that, it should be, I know they've come first because they're paying for it, but making it available to the residents and the other workers in the area, it helps us a lot in transportation management. And it also helps, this is going to sound corny, but it also helps build community because people meet each other on buses and chat and find out that those aren't just weird people there working in labs, etc. So I really like that. And I don't know if we should put it in a condition or just say, note that the applicant will consider that. I think it's really great public benefit. And I guess the question that still nags at me about the bird safe glass is, we hear a lot about the bird safe glass, and we're also hearing about these coatings and stuff. What is the difference in requiring the coatings that are reflective, et cetera, so the birds can see it, and requiring the bird safe glass? I mean, is one like 5 times more effective than the other? We've been talking about it as if it's bird safe glass or nothing. So I don't want to just require something because it feels good. I really want to know whether it's going to make a difference. There's a lot of impacts on birds in Berkeley besides high rises. I find dead birds in my yard and there's no high rise near me. So anyway, and I don't know if any of you can help me out on that, or I'll just have to wing it. But otherwise, I'm satisfied with the parking amount. And I will tell people that I remember doing labs way back when I worked in the planning department, and they are really, it's a very different population than normal commercial operations and homes. It's an entirely different schedule that these people keep, and they're not going to ride their bikes at midnight. So I'm satisfied on the parking requirements. And the building moving, in theory, it sounds like a wonderful thing to do. But years ago, when we had several buildings that moved, one of them held up the project for a long time. It took them 3 years to find a place to move it. And it was a small building. And the problems they faced in going under wires and, around corners, moving it was not cheap. It was pretty expensive. So I don't know if the people who are interested in the house have really investigated the cost of moving it that distance, but maybe there's a way they can make it available for a certain period of time, and then if they can't move it, then they can demolish it, which is kind of a condition we did on a couple of earlier projects way back in ancient days. So that's it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Deborah, I think my understanding of the difference between the bird safety mitigations is what members of the public are asking for is the special glass or special reflective glass that they're going to put on the west side on all 4 sides. But what they have now what's required now on all 4 sides is those things like the I forget what you call them, the things that come out so that from the side birds see that instead of the glass.
And but we also have the coatings, the reflective coatings on all of the windows.
Is that true? I guess maybe
the bird safe glass would be just on the western side.
Right.
All of the windows had reflective coatings on them. So I'm, maybe it's even not enough money that we should just require it. But I'm always a little reluctant to require something because it sounds good, but we don't really know how much difference it would make. So, and I don't know if there's anyone there who can answer this question.
Yeah, perhaps our CEQA consultant could answer that. He already did a little bit. Anyway, Carrie Olson's next.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay, let's hear it.
So anyone wants to add, subtract, whatever, we can discuss. We have a recommendation from staff that we adopt the proposed mitigated neg deck and use permits for 2 projects. So that would be my recommendation, but this is what I'd like to see added. So it's part of my motion. I'd like the bird safe feature to be at least the same as Berkeley Commons. And I'm not assured of that yet. I ask questions, but I'm just making it sort of that simple. If Berkeley Commons was west side glass and the other three sides film, then that's the way we should go. If it was missing any of the sides, that would obviously change my motion because we have to cover all the sides. But at the minimum, it needs to be what Berkeley Commons did. Then my other suggestions are a little, maybe a little out there for folks, but let's see what you think. I just bought a new car. I did not buy an electric car because I don't have a driveway or a garage. I don't have any way to charge it. And the city apparently doesn't have any plans for any of us here in the flats to charge cars. So here are going to be, here will be a bunch of spaces. Obviously, I've worked in tech all my life. I get it that people work late at night. Nevertheless, there will be spaces for the neighborhood to park cars. So let's make them available. So my suggestion is that the EV ready spaces be available to neighbors, and I'm going to suggest maybe a half-a-mile radius, but maybe it needs to be specific to streets. Maybe they have to, I don't know, receive a pass to be able to get in, something that makes it finite and not infinite to use those spaces overnight, and they would have to agree to be out in the morning. I'd like there to be, and I realize we can't require this, but I'd like to send the suggestion that they consider making the railroad crossing on Bancroft safe for their tenants. If suggestions could be made for what that might be, I'm not sure what that might be, but anyhow, and the shuttle should be in our motion that we expect there to be a shuttle and not, I'm sorry, I had a project in Emeryville in the late 80s and we were promised that Emery go round and it didn't come for a long time. Our business was out of business before that shuttle came around. So we should have a time certain for when we expect that shuttle to be ready to go. Would it be upon completion? Why not? That gives them plenty of time. I wasn't going to vote for the parking garage because, geez, we tell everyone else in Berkeley they don't need parking, and here we are. I'm sorry, to quote Joni Mitchell, putting up a parking lot. This is not what we do. But I recognize that there actually will be a need for EV parking, and the whole project is all electric, and that's kind of exciting. So to me, it hinges on the bird safe, that they do that right. And if possible, make that house available. And I haven't heard anything that stops it from being moved. I hear a lot of talk about what might take it longer to be moved, but I would be really unhappy to see one of the oldest houses, and it is literally like probably either the second or third oldest house in Berkeley, demolished for no reason if we could have saved it. So I would like us to say that we would like them to save that house and have it be moved. And I realize that's sort of like a wish list thing, but again, it could be a time certain. If nobody's come forward with real concrete plans by a time certain, then allow the demolition. That's my motion. I know it's confusing.
I did take notes, so I can read it back. Yeah, thanks, Carrie. Igor.
Thank you. So I would like to second that motion with one amendment. Board Member Olson, if you're open to it, which would be to say the bird safe glass treatments or bird safe treatments would be at least the same as the ones on 600 Addison. And I guess I would start with that. I really implore you to, I mean, this issue keeps coming back. And we need to figure this out. I don't think, you know, it's not great that we have not codified anything. I appreciate that we have an extensive workload. I appreciate, Steve, that this is, you know, you all are short-staffed and you have a lot of priorities, but we need to figure this out. And if to Commissioner Sanderson's point, it can be shown that there is significantly more effectiveness to bird-safe glass treatment, then I really implore you to do that. It will be a goodwill gesture to the community. I would also, just as a further suggestion, ask you to consult with the Golden Gate Audubon Society. I know that's very specific, but this is with my Sierra Club hat on. We are sort of engaged in that space, but not really. Golden Gate Audubon Society really are the experts in that space when it comes to bird safe treatments for buildings. And then I want to just echo everything else that Board Member Olson said. I know you've heard this very sad, violent story before about me as a multifamily tenant in West Berkeley, hoping and praying that there would be some available public charging spaces for my vote of the 3 that are on the 5th Street parking lot. And sometimes they're broken and sometimes they're otherwise not available. And it would be lovely if there was public charging space available at a time when they're not in use for this garage, especially given where the state is going, where they're seriously considering by at least 2035, maybe 2030, making 100% of new car sales be all zero emission vehicles. And then I want to just, well, definitely amplify the ask about the shuttle. And I would suggest to staff actually, when former Commissioner Denise Pinkston was on the board, she kept bringing this up. And she would talk to every West Berkeley developer that came through about paying into a West Berkeley shuttle, which could be an extension of the Emory go-around or something else. So maybe this is just for staff to go back at some of the projects we approved. Circa, I don't know when she started doing this, actually, maybe 2015 through 2018 when she was on the board. To see if there are any conditions we approved around a shuttle. And if it makes sense, we could approve that again. So that would be sort of not a modification, but an amplification, I think, of Board Member Olson's motion. And then lastly, because I want to end on a high note, there's a lot to appreciate about this project. And I know it's the law in Berkeley to do all electric new construction, including industrial. But I love going to other jurisdictions. I was just speaking to the Berkeley City Council, which adopted their REACH code on a 3-2 vote. I spoke with Hayward last week that is mulling expanding their REACH code. And they always keep trying to do exemptions for industrial. And I always tell them, Berkeley has no exemptions for industrial, and the sky hasn't fallen. So I appreciate your leadership in creating the proof of concept and ensuring that we truly can be a leader in combating climate change in this way. Thank you so much. And so that is my second to the motion. If Board Member Olson, you're friendly to my slight modifications.
Absolutely. I am friendly to it. Thank you, Igor.
Great. We have a motion and a second. And since there aren't 5 hands up, I'm going to make a quick comment about it. Regarding the EV spaces being open to the public, I think that's a great idea. I would like to request that whatever language we put in there, make it clear that they are allowed to prioritize their own employees, because I could see that like going very badly for them. Like, oh no, we have to open it for the public, and then suddenly everybody parks there, and then their employees can't park there, and that's not what we want. I think that's not fair. So I'm not sure how to craft that, but I would hope that if you agree, the motion maker and seconder agree, that we could include language that was clear about that. So that was my comment. Deborah.
I think we could do what you suggested, and we have these mitigation measures for transportation demand management plans where they have a concept and the conditions of approval, and they work out the details of the plan with public works or transportation planning. So maybe we can have something that just has the concept and requires them prior to a certain time to have the plan approved by transportation planning, something, or the zoning officer or something, so that we don't have to have all the details now, because we really couldn't do that. So I think it's a good idea. Of the suggestions that Carrie has put forward and Igor has elaborated on, the one I find most concerning is the 2-story house. It went to LPC with an application to have it made as structure of significance, and LPC voted no, and they denied the application. So I love old houses. I live in one, and I renovated it from top to toe. But I don't want the love of the concept of this house to delay this project. And their first phase, as I understand it, is to do the demolition. That was kind of, they're doing the renovations now in phase 1, and then they would move to the demolition so they could build a garage. So if there's a way, Carrie and Igor could structure it so that it doesn't delay the project. I've seen that become a nightmare in the past, and I don't think anybody needs that kind of nightmare now. So if it's a short-term date and if these people want it, then they have to move it by a certain time to another site, even if it's not the recipient site. But we've had numerous buildings that lasted for decades on some parcel of land that they were supposed to get moved away from later, that in the end just deteriorated. So I guess I'm uncomfortable with it unless it has a realistic schedule that's not going to delay the project.
I think what Carrie said, Carrie, feel free to say what you actually said. I think she said make available, which is pretty, that language.
Yeah, yes, and I think that's fine, but make available as a certain date that is early in the project. If you might, and that's my concern. And the first phase is demolition. So,
and that is the language I used was time certain. I do not know, honestly. I'm just I think we should put it out there, and city staff could see if they're getting a project that is technically an ADU because it's going on another property. Maybe it's something that gets done without, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm trying to have an open mind here.
I'm joining you.
I have heard from two different individuals that the inside of that house is really beautiful and doesn't need a lot of work. I realize there's asbestos shingles on the outside, but the eaves are in good shape. I'm just telling you what I've heard. It might be an easier project than we know. I'm happy with the idea of a time certain.
Okay.
You know, when you have asbestos shingles and you're the homeowner, you can just pull them off yourself. Just a little pro tip out there. Michael, comment.
I really like the motion and the second, as well as the discussion, and I'm glad that the idea of the house is brought up again. I would like to, and again, this may be out of the scope of this project, but I think we've heard from a couple of the neighbors about their strong concern about the traffic as far as not looking at this project and cumulative with the other projects that's going on. And it would be really nice if there was a, West Berkeley Traffic Commission group.
We've done that.
Oh, we've done that. Okay. Covered. Never mind.
It was a huge study of just West Berkeley, and the results were phenomenal. And how bad it was phenomenal. And it's that's why I asked the question under CEQA if they did the cumulative analysis still, but way back 15 years ago, it was at the limit then. So we knew 15 years ago that any addition of anything is going to cause traffic congestion, and just, the idea is, are we going to then stop all development in West Berkeley? People didn't want to go there. So it might be good for staff to kind of at some point just update us on the history of this traffic analysis problem in West Berkeley. It's a tough problem. And the transportation planning has tried various different efforts to keep the highway traffic out of West Berkeley and come off and then go back on without going through West Berkeley. But we can certainly look. I think it's a good idea to look at what options we have for doing cumulative analysis. And in the past, projects started with the analysis that was done for the whole West Berkeley, and then incrementally. Now that was 10 years ago, so it may not be valid anymore. But I doubt if the traffic got better.
Thanks for that history. Appreciate it.
I didn't mean to shut you up. I'm sorry. It's a good idea, I guess. Sometimes it's difficult to know the past. It makes you a little cynical.
All right. Hey, Sharon. I have a question. Yes. Did we ever figure out, and by we I mean you, what we actually voted on for Berkeley Commons? Did we vote on the recommendation, or did we make it more for bird safe glass?
Yeah, so I could not find any further condition on bird safe glass. So there's just that mitigation that's identical to the one that we have for this project. And that's it.
Okay, great. And I think the way Carrie phrased it, it said, whatever's in that, do the same, do at least that much. So maybe it doesn't matter, but it's good to get clarification. Thank you for looking into that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we have a motion and a second and no hands up. So does that mean we should vote on it?
Right.
We should definitely repeat it first. But
there's some dates we need to fill in because, on this making the house available, to me, a reasonable date would be up until a month prior to demolition beginning. But I don't know if that's something that other people think is too short. So hear people on that.
Yeah. Igor put his thumbs up. Well, he's a seconder, so that's important. Yes is in support. Carrie, what do you think about that?
I'm okay with that. Sorry, I just gotta have a thought on the bird safe glass though, sorry, which is still my top issue. That the mitigation in the Berkeley Commons is inadequate. And I would really like us to improve on that language for this project so that it can be adequate. I know that it won't be perfect, and I know that someday in 50 years we'll have something out of the Planning Commission that we can hang our hat on, but can we please, since we all seem to be on the same page with this issue, try to make sure that we do something even better, just in terms of our language.
Okay, so what do you propose, since you're the motion maker? You want to change the language in your motion?
Well, they're giving us bird safe glass on the west, and they're giving us different answers for everything else. I'd like to ask, does everyone agree that regardless of their putting up white curtains on the east side, or putting up, having the windows be recessed, I don't want to lose those two things because they seem important, but would we all agree that they should have bird safe film on all sides? Not on the west, sorry, but on the other three sides.
I thought that was already.
They already agreed to it, yeah.
I guess I want to call that out as specific and not point to a mitigation measure.
Good.
It's there. It says, shall include external film and/or glass coverings designed to reduce bird strikes, required on all windows.
And isn't there something though about minimums?
It says that is the minimum that would be required. And then the option of going up to 90% on the west.
Option. I'm saying no option. I'm saying that would be ask for 100% on the west.
They're doing 100% on the west.
We can put that in the motion though. Just
yeah,
they said
I'm just saying we put it in the motion.
Okay. Yeah, but the external film is already required. Whatever else they do with shades and curtains or whatever. I mean, that's okay. Someone correct me if I'm reading it wrong.
I wasn't clear what you wanted to add to the motion for that.
I'm not either.
The motion is to add that they'll do 100% bird safe glass on the west.
Oh, okay.
Plus, you know, as required in the mitigation measure. For the other three sides, they will put up bird safe film and other measures such as recessed glass and interior curtains.
So basically, Carrie, the other stuff they're already required to do. So it sounds like what you want to change is that the bird safe glass on the west side needs to be 100%, not 90%.
Yes, but I guess the other thing I'm looking at is that this comes up what, every month? We have a project, and I'm looking at a way where we can say we're going to do this at a minimum every time. This is what we do, not pointing to a mitigation measure, but pointing to things that this is what the zoning board is going to expect.
Well, we can that can come up next time when there isn't a CEQA thing. So everyone remember that.
Yeah, it seems to be the standard that we've adopted on previous projects.
But it might not be a environmental review.
Yeah.
But we could just say it. Okay. So, but let's keep focused on what we're doing right now. Yes, had his hand up a few times, and I just wanted to give you a chance to say what you're going to say. Sorry about that.
It's all good, thank you. Just trying to solve this issue around bird film, bird glass, and what's required. I'm not reading Bio 1, sorry to throw a wrench here. I'm not reading Bio 1 as saying that you need bird film on the whole building. Bio 1 says you need bird film to reduce bird strikes, and then it says such measures shall incorporate one or more of the following glazing options for 90% of the windows on the west-facing building facade. So it says that you must require film, and you must do it at a minimum of 90% of the west.
Thank you. That's
There's
what I
a sentence
thought.
above that. It's a sentence before that. Specifically and at a minimum, windows of the proposed building shall include external film and/or glass coverings designed to reduce bird strikes. Such measures shall incorporate one or more of the following glazing options for 90% of the windows on the west-facing facade.
But
that's just the west. It's confusing because then they say 90% of the west. If they say all of it, and then they say 90% of the west, we're going, well, which is it?
As it says, it shall incorporate one of it. Everything has to have glazing, and then it shall incorporate one or more of the following options in addition. So staff.
Yeah, I think we need staff's job is to tell us what this means. So we're help. Sharon.
I think Matthew explained it earlier, and that the interpretation of that mitigation is that all sides of the building will have at least a film, external film, and the west side shall have one of the options in addition.
Matthew's hand is up. Can
Yeah,
we? I'm gonna wait. Why am I asking? I'm chair. I'm gonna let Matthew.
Yes.
Talk. Sorry, Matthew. I didn't realize you weren't just here.
That's
Matthew, help us. Yeah.
Sure. So the entire building, all four sides of the building, requires external film or glass covering specifically designed to reduce bird strikes. Since the western portion of the building faces Aquatic Park, it requires additional measures that can include bird-safe glass or other fritted glass. So 100% has some sort of baseline bird-safe treatment. The west side gets additional treatment because it faces Aquatic Park.
Great. That is clear. Thank you so much. I hope that's clear. It's clear to me. I'm trusting him. It's his job to get this right, so I'm assuming he got it right. It sounds like he did. So that's great. Okay. So I want to recognize Igor, but before we move on, does anyone else have comments on this particular question or issue? Or are we good? Okay, Igor.
So I just want to amend the motion one more time if Kerry is friendly, and it's just to change the recommendation to consult with Golden Gate Audubon Society prior to making a decision on bird-safe glass treatments to a condition. And I kind of agonized over this because I don't love that level of specificity for condition. Because it is a specific organization, but they actually are the Bay Area's foremost experts, and I think it would be valuable. And it's just consultation, so it's not like we're asking to impose something concrete. So, Kerry, if you're friendly to that, that will be my addition.
I'm friendly to that, Igor. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm adding that to my notes. Consult with Audubon Society. Okay, Carrie.
Thank you. I tried to follow everything that the fellow from LSA said and the mitigations. I still think there's wiggle room in there, so I still recommend that we add that line about the film being the minimum, because the presentation we were shown showed also two different things that they were going to do to mitigate against bird strikes. On the east side, the recessed windows and the curtains. I don't want to offer three choices. I want to offer protection of the glass against bird strike. So maybe it just is a line in there about it's our intention to prevent bird strikes by ensuring that any glass that isn't specifically bird safe glass will have film on it. Bird safe film on it. And again, my interest is in coming up with language that we'll use anytime we have this.
Okay. Samantha and Sharon, does that make sense? Is that doable? Do you have any feedback on that? Sounds to me like it's duplicative of a requirement that's already in there, which is fine with me.
Yeah, it sounds duplicative, but maybe just kind of clarifying. Because,
You should
within
take
the
that.
discussion.
What's missing from the requirement in there now is that it has an option of film or coverings designed to prevent bird encounters with a glass. So as I understand what you want, Carrie, is to remove that second option. So
I do, because the bird safe people I hear from don't think that those mitigations are as effective as film. So if we can, for a small cost, have more effective, then we should go for it. And we'll also have those other measures, so that's good too.
Okay. My understanding from Matthew is that the film is required, but I agree that there's no reason not to say that as long as it makes sense to staff who's actually has to write this up.
Could I?
Yeah.
Can I summarize what I heard to make sure that I didn't miss anything? There are lots of changes.
Yeah, please. This is good.
Okay, so as a condition related to bird safe, a statement that the intention is to reduce bird strikes. And at a minimum, it should have the same mitigation as the Berkeley Commons, bird safe film on north, south, and east, 100% bird safe glass on the west, and I think this is a little duplicative, and as required by mitigation on the other three sides, such as recessed glass and curtains, and then consultation with the Golden Gate Audubon Society before final decisions on bird safe measures.
Sounds good.
Okay. One.
Thanks for that.
Can you go through the others too?
Yeah, I'm sure we're gonna vote soon, so
Yeah.
let's summarize the motion. I have my notes, but I'm sure Samantha, do you have your own notes?
I do. We might have to combine a little bit. For the EV parking, I heard that as a recommendation, so please correct me if I'm wrong. But a recommendation to explore making the EV parking available overnight to residents within a specific radius.
That was a recommendation, yes. I think it will make them much happier, have much happier neighbors.
Yeah.
So hopefully they'll take it seriously.
They can make some money off of it too. Didn't say they can't charge for it.
And then for the shuttle, I'm like reading my notes and they don't make any sense. So if someone could repeat that one for me.
I wrote shuttle is in the motion.
So I think we're saying that they should make the shuttle require that it be operative by a certain time. And I would suggest within 1 year of first occupancy of the building.
That makes sense.
We won't have the whole building, but they'll have some people in there, and within a year they should have the shuttle running.
That makes sense.
And it should be available to the community.
Yeah, and I would, no pun intended, but I would strongly recommend that you look at conditions for West Berkeley projects we've approved between 2016 and 2018, like larger developments, because I'm pretty sure we had a West Berkeley shuttle condition in there. And if there's anything from there that could still be useful, maybe that could help craft the language.
That's a recommendation to staff, not a recommendation in the.
That is a recommendation to staff to do that.
I think that we need more specific language. So saying that it's running 1 year from the first occupancy and made available to the local population or to the public.
I think Carrie and I think Igor said that was okay.
Yeah,
right?
let's just be specific instead of define. It would still be good to do that research, Igor. But I want to get us with specific language on the condition there, not later.
Okay, so that's fine, I think. Samantha, are you good with that one?
Did that include having it available to the public?
Yes.
And were the shuttle runs, were those conditions or recommendations?
Conditions.
Conditions. Okay, thank you.
I mean, that's what I would do.
And Samantha, the shuttle and the EV charging availability, they have to be able to prioritize their employees.
Right. Thank you. I had that in my other notes. Yeah. And then for the house, for the duplex, was it a condition or a recommendation? And then was there a time frame for?
I thought it was a condition that they make it available up until 1 month prior to demolition.
That makes sense.
Just clear and simple.
Okay. I think I got them all.
I have one more that I wrote down, but then I'm going to remind everyone, and I'm going to say why I don't think we need it. Which is the railroad crossing. Carrie mentioned that in her initial
That's fine. I've made my feelings clear.
Okay. Yeah, I think that applicant was pretty responsive to that in a way that makes me feel that we don't need it. But so can we X that one, Carrie?
Yes.
Great. Okay, that's all I had for my notes.
All right.
Cool. Are we good? Carrie, was that?
Yeah, no, that was everything. You just need Igor to say okay.
Igor, okay?
Okay.
Great. Samantha, okay?
Yes.
Great. Anyone else? Not okay? All right. I think we should vote.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to just repeat them just as the formality.
Sure.
And so this is to adopt the mitigated negative declaration and approve the use permit for 2213 4th and 747 Bancroft Way with the following modifications. The modifications to the staff recommended modifications to the conditions of approval for 747 Bancroft. It was number 28, 58, 59, and 63. And for 2213 4th, it was condition number 24. And then the added conditions by the ZAB related to bird safe measures with the intention to reduce bird strikes, to be at a minimum same mitigation as Berkeley Commons, bird safe film on the north, south, east, and west, 100% bird safe glass on the, bird safe film on the north, south, and east, and 100% bird safe glass on the west. And then, and as required by the mitigation measures, the recessed glass and curtains, and consultation with Golden Gate Audubon Society before final decisions on the measures. As a condition, that the shuttle be operative within 1 year of occupancy.
Just from the first occupancy. I mean, the building may have one space rented and they may have 5 not rented. So within a year of the first occupancy, the shuttle should be running.
Within 1 year.
I'm gonna let you finish, Samantha, and I have a question about that.
Okay, within 1 year of first occupancy, and to be available to the public, but still with priority given to employees.
I think that went with the EV.
I think it's a good idea for both.
Okay, I'll buy it.
Yep.
They should have that right.
Yeah, I think Board Member Olson had said it was on both.
Okay.
Did you have a question, or should I keep going?
Well, why don't you keep going? No, let me ask my question. What happens, because I don't want to belabor this, but what happens, it's a year after occupancy, how is that a condition? Because they have their they're already doing it. What, can they take their use permit away if they don't have the shuttle a year after occupancy? I'm just wondering if that's enforceable.
Yeah.
That's a good question. What would we do if they had their shuttle not available for 2 years after?
I mean, would we take away their use permit? That seems. I don't know. I don't want to can of worms.
Yeah.
Well, the conditions of approval are subject to code enforcement actions, which is, I don't remember, it's section 4 something.
Yeah.
23.4 something.
Okay, so it's nominally enforceable.
Yeah.
Okay, just curious.
And then
good.
And then as a condition for the duplex to be available for up to 1 month prior to demolition. And then the recommendation to explore making EV parking available overnight to residents within a specific radius, and the ability to prioritize employee parking.
I have a question on that. Is that only for residents at night?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
They said it only for residents at night. If there are other workers, I don't want to I don't want to upset the apple cart now. We'll stick with residents.
Well, we do have, just so you guys know, we have 30 minutes to vote on this.
Okay.
I mean, I think we can do it, but.
I think we can do it. No, I was just wondering if we're restricting it to people who live in the area and over only at night. Are we saying XX spaces that at any time or day or night?
I think Igor has his hand up, and I think he said specific.
I probably, confused just introduced a can of worms. That's the most specific example I could think of. Mm-hmm. But why don't we make it more general than that? I think the applicant knows what we are intending for them to explore, and we can keep it flexible and see, when parking spaces might be available and for whom. Although the intent is to prioritize folks that live in the area. Although I may take my vote there, maybe if you do a large enough radius. So there you go.
Don't do self-dealing, Igor.
Yeah.
Watch it. You're gonna have it.
I will go out of my way.
Excuse yourself.
Yes. Yeah. Right. For the next one.
Okay, so just leave that vague.
So, to be available to residents within a certain radius or the public with the ability to prioritize employee parking.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Did you have your hand up?
Yeah, just to simplify that, I mean, can't they just contract with a third party for their surface parking lot to have a few different EV charging spaces that anybody can use? Because it's usually software that takes care of this. People go and they park, they charge their car. If they leave their car too long, they get charged for it. Anyone can use it, and employees can have a program that subsidizes it so that they get some subsidy from, their employer. That is another way to do it. It's not like they have to go in the parking garage or anything.
Oh. Why would it just be the surface parking?
I'm just thinking out loud that.
Okay, good.
Well, even by the time this is done, there'll be some new third party or some new software that has a different system. Like it used to be requiring car share spaces, and you have to have car share and PFOBs and everything for everybody. That was when I was doing a lot of multifamily stuff. And then it changes. And so my thought is like, isn't it just basically a publicly available charging spot? That's all it is, right?
Yeah, as long as these would be excess spaces make available some, I don't know, I mean, we don't want to require all their excess spaces, but you know, they can prioritize spaces for their employees and excess spaces can be made available by whatever means they want to the public. They can choose how they want to implement it. And by the time we do the amendments, it's going to be a whole new technology we never thought about.
Yeah, we should leave it vague for that reason.
Yeah, thank you.
Good. Let's use this app.
Oh.
Okay. So is that good, Samantha? Okay.
Yeah, I think we got it all.
Okay, great.
Okay, to vote. Chair O'Keefe.
Oh. Yes.
Board Member Kim?
Yes.
Board Member Olson?
Yes.
Board Member Gaffney?
Yes.
Board Member Thompson?
Yes.
Board Member Trigu?
Yes.
Board Member Sanderson?
Yes.
Board Member Duffy?
Yes, and I want to welcome him to my neighborhood in West Berkeley.
And Chair Khan is absent.
Good work, everybody.
All right, the very complicated motion passes. So, oh God, I have to read the whole address. 2213 4th Street / 787 parentheses 747 parentheses 787 Bancroft Way. You have your use permit. It's appealable to the city council. Enjoy. Okay, so Igor's got his hand up. Why?
Motion to adjourn.
No, we have staff communication.
Oh, okay.
It'll be so short, I promise.
There is a thing she's got to say.
Very short. So we have been meeting on the 4th Thursday of the month. And so I just wanted to remind everyone that for July and August, in order to align with the city's summer recesses, we'll be meeting the 2nd Thursday in July and August. So I believe that's July 14th and August 11th. I don't have my calendar up. So
I have mine, and that's correct.
Okay. So anyway, I just wanted to remind you guys, so we'll be back here in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
That's all I had.
There is a DRC on here.
It's a standing. It's standing, and then
I'm just
Chair Khan usually gives an update when he.
I mean, I can tell.
Well, Kimberly's on it, so you know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, the two projects we had. The first one was 742 Grayson Street, and that one is fairly interesting because it's fairly close to our project site we reviewed tonight. It's also research and development and a parking garage. So yeah, that's 742 Grayson Street, and I think that'll be coming for a ZAB review as well. So we'll see that one. The other one was 2439 Durant Avenue, which is the old KIPS building that Chair Collins' firm is the architect on that. And yeah, those were our two projects. So I think we'll see both. Do we see Durant Avenue as well? I believe we do. Yeah. So we'll be.
What was the address of the second one? I couldn't quite understand.
2439 Durant.
Okay.
Yeah. Those will be coming up to us soon.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you. Igor, did you want to make that motion now?
Sure.
Oh, no, we lost
Yes.
him. Okay.
Motion
Hi.
to adjourn.
Second.
Aye, motion to adjourn.
Okay, there was a motion to adjourn in a second. Can we do a roll call vote really fast?
Okay. I lost my thing. Chair O'Keefe.
Yes.
Board Member Kim.
Yes, have a good night.
Olson.
Yes.
Gaffney. Thompson,
Yes.
Trigu,
Yes.
Sanderson,
Yes.
Duffy.
One quick thing I couldn't help but share, but it's been on my mind. If it's this straightforward and enthusiastically we can approve 500 new jobs in my neighborhood, I hope then we can see the writing on the wall and know that we must also act to approve new housing in our neighborhoods too.
And with that, you're voting yes?
Yes.
Okay. So the motion, was that the last person?
And Chair Khan is absent.
Right. Okay. So yet the motion passes and we are adjourned. Thank you so much, everyone, for your hard work.
Good work.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
It's good. Good night, everyone.
The birds will be